everyone. It is 5:30 p.m. on April 3rd, 2023. I'll administratively call to order this meeting of the City of Cocoa Beach Planning Board. Please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. We could please have the roll call.
Mr. Arnold?
Present.
Mr. Mason?
Present.
Ms. Snyder?
Present.
Ms. Colorado?
Present.
Ms. Bobo?
Present.
Mr. Tarver?
Present.
And Ms. McKinley? Present. Thank you.
As some of you know, and the rest will learn now, it's your first order of business at your first meeting of the planning board in each calendar year to choose a new chair for that year. And so at this time, I will open the floor for nominations for chair. Yes, ma'am.
I'd like to nominate Lenny Arnold for chair.
Are there any other nominations? Hearing no other nominations, we'll close nominations for the office of chair. I would suggest that a motion would be in order to approve Lenny Arnold as chair. Someone can just say so moved.
So moved.
All right. Is there a second?
I'll second
All right. All those in favor say aye.
it. Aye.
Any opposed, nay? Mr. Arnold, congratulations. You are now the chair for this year. I will do my best to not speak the rest of the night. There we go.
Back around. All right, so next up is the election of the vice chair. Do we have any nominations?
I'd like to nominate Lisa as vice chair.
All right. Any other nominations? All right, we'll close the nominations. Do you have a motion to,
So moved.
all right, second?
I second it.
All right. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All right, passes 5-0. Next up is the approval of the agenda. Do I have a motion?
A motion to approve the December minutes, the agenda for this month, sorry.
Second.
All right.
Second the motion.
All right, any discussion? All right, all in favor of approval of the agenda, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Next up is the approval of the minutes from December the 5th. Do I have a motion?
I move to approve the minutes of December the 5th, 2022.
Do I have a second?
A second.
All right, any discussion on the minutes from the meeting? All right, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, passes 5-0. We have no unfinished business. Up next is new business. First up is Diamond Bay Reserve. Do we have someone who's going to make a
Your
presentation?
presentation.
Sure. Yeah, we'll go ahead and do the thing. Planning board members, we've kind of rolled out a new procedure with the Board of Adjustments and on certain items with the City Commission as well. A little bit of a recitation relating to quasi-judicial proceedings whenever we have a quasi-judicial item that come before you. As you all know, you have a number of other items on the agenda tonight that are legislative that don't have as many procedural safeguards, but on the quasi-judicial ones, we figure it's a good idea to go ahead and put some of these rules in everybody's head, give them an opportunity to get their head in the right place. So with that, and this is for the benefit of the public as well, this agenda item is for a public hearing for the review of a request for a site plan approval. Any individual, including the applicant, staff, witnesses, or members of the public who plan to speak or offer testimony during the public hearing on this item, we'd ask that you rise and be sworn by the clerk.
Please raise your right hand. Do you swear or affirm to tell the whole truth and the truth?
Site plan approval is quasi-judicial in nature, which requires our public hearing to comply with procedural requirements established in Florida law. Quasi judicial proceedings are less formal than proceedings in, for example, circuit court, but are more formal than some other types of meetings, and they must follow certain basic standards of notice and due process. Decisions that you all make in rendering your recommendation must be based on competent, substantial evidence. Please note that only competent, substantial, fact-based testimony or evidence will be considered by the board in its deliberation and voting on this item. Pure speculation or mere opinion, not based on competent facts, cannot be legally considered by the board in weighing the appropriateness of this item. Lay testimony with fact-based support may be considered competent, substantial evidence. And for benefit of the public, if you intend to speak, please keep this in mind. I would ask, has this item been properly advertised?
Yes, it was properly advertised, and the record includes documentation to that effect.
All right, thank you. At this time, if any board member has a conflict of interest concerning this item that would prohibit you from voting on this item, I'd ask you to please disclose it for the record and then file the appropriate Form 8B. Does anyone have a voting conflict with regard to this item? All right, hearing none, we'll go ahead and move on. Also, at this time, we'd ask that if any member of the board has had any ex parte communications concerning this item, and as a reminder, ex parte communications are communications with either the applicant, the developer, or members of the public concerning this particular project, this particular site plan, or potentially a site visit. If you've had any ex parte communications, those are perfectly permissible under Florida law, but we would ask you to please disclose them with whom you've had those ex parte communications and the general nature of what those conversations were. Does anybody have any ex parte communications to disclose?
I did a site visit and drove and walked around the area just to see, kind of what's there.
Very
That's
good.
it.
Anyone else?
Would a site visit qualify if it was back in 2019?
If it related to this project as it was proposed, it would. So, you
Yes,
had a site visit back in 2019?
when I was with the Board of Adjustments.
Very good.
Doesn't
That
matter
is-
I mean, I'm not a voting member today, so I don't have to say anything, right?
If you happen to, you're correct, you don't have to.
Okay.
But, that is all the speech I have for this item. At this point, Chair, I would suggest staff is ready to go ahead and proceed with their presentation on the item.
I didn't have, you weren't chair yet. After she's done, it'll start from here.
All right. Good evening. Christy Anderson. I'm the principal planner for the city of Cocoa Beach. Tonight, we have a large-scale site plan approval. We're looking for a recommendation for you to provide to the city commission. This property is located at 3250 North Atlantic Avenue. This is a site aerial of the entire property, which was previously 3300 North Atlantic Avenue. The zoning district here is RM2 multifamily professional with a high-density residential and professional land use. The request is for you to review and consider proposed large-scale site development plan for a multifamily mixed-use development in accordance with the requirements provided within the Cocoa Beach Land Development Code, Section 402. This project consists of a 20-unit, 5-story residential condominium building, 5 2-story townhouses consisting of 10 units, a residential dock, a residential swimming pool, and a 1-story commercial restaurant. This is the aerial of the current property. The property was previously owned by the First United Methodist Church of Cocoa Beach and was split and sold by the church to the current owners in fall of 2019. The property owners have worked closely with the church property to create a development plan that will benefit and improve both properties. Easement agreements have been executed between the property owner and the church, including joint stormwater drainage easements, parking ingress and egress, where they're allowing the church to use a portion of the parking lot for 25 vehicles for Sunday morning services only for their church overflow. And access and utility easements just for the operation of any kind of utilities within the Sarasota Lane area. This is very difficult to see. I can try and zoom in as much as possible for you.
Are those also right here?
Yes, okay, so there are 3 full sets of all of the plans up here on the table tonight, so you can have a full version. It's a little bit easier for you to see. So the parking facilities have been provided for all proposed uses. The minimum required spaces for all residential is 60 spaces based on the number of units. They've provided 71 spaces. For the 150 seat proposed restaurant, they're required to have 52 seats, and they are providing 55. The total number of parking spaces on the site is a total of 126. Traffic impact analysis was done and reviewed by the city engineer. They've provided a stormwater maintenance plan that was also reviewed for compliance and was approved by the city engineer. The property owner will be responsible for the future maintenance of any approved stormwater management facilities. And they must ensure that these systems perform originally as designed and permitted by the city and/or state. We will be requiring a stormwater maintenance agreement signed between the property owner and the city prior to the issuance of a building permit to ensure that these facilities are managed well into the future. Fire safety access plan. This was not noted in your briefing, and it was a mistake on my part, but it has been approved by the fire marshal. So there were several iterations in order to provide that adequate safe access for the fire trucks. So they had to do a few revisions to work that out, but ultimately it was approved by the fire marshal in February of '23. So that was one of the last items that was pending. The concurrency evaluation was performed, and they've confirmed that adequate potable water, solid waste, sanitary sewer services, they're available. All utility plans were reviewed and approved by the Water Reclamation Department. They have, as required, provided a school capacity availability determination letter, known as SCALD, confirming that they have adequate school facilities reserved to accommodate the impacts of residential development. So we have, available schools for these children to attend to if they live here. So, an environmental impact report was also conducted on the property, and findings concluded that the development of the property would have a minor environmental impact. All existing invasive plant species, I think there's Brazilian peppers out there and a few other invasives, they are going to be removed and replaced with Florida-friendly landscaping. There is a dense mangrove fringe that is abutting the Banana River Lagoon. See over here. And then all mangroves will be trimmed pursuant to the FDEP regulations and will be done so by a licensed mangrove trimmer. Reclaimed water does serve the property and will be utilized to maintain all the proposed landscaping. Landscaping plans were reviewed for compliance and approved by planning and zoning. In addition to the lighting plan that was also provided, it meets the code requirements and provides minimal light trespass onto adjacent properties. Just trying to give a closer view of the whole site. Bear with me. So right here is where we have the 5-story condominium. These are where the townhouses are located. And then this is where the proposed commercial restaurant is located. They do have stormwater facilities that encroach over to the church property because it's managing the stormwater for both properties. Let's see. So this property was granted a special exception to permit a restaurant with outdoor seating with the condition that the restaurant must be located on the east side of the property and is required to front onto North Atlantic Avenue. This is where they have situated it, so it does meet that requirement of the special exception approval. The proposed restaurant was also granted a 5-foot front setback for the outdoor seating area instead of the required setback of 25 feet. You can see the actual building that the commercial restaurant is located in is set back that 25 feet, but the outdoor seating area is within that 25-foot area and has a 5-foot front setback. A setback variance was also granted to allow a north side setback of 0 feet instead of the required minimum of 15, with the condition that the variance only applies to a residential structure located no greater than 200 feet from the waterside property line. So here they have that 5-story commercial or 5-story residential condominium at a 0 north side setback, and it is it is set back no greater than 200 feet. I believe it's around, I want to say 100 feet or so from that property line. From here to here, we have 85 feet, so it's well within that 200-foot requirement. The property also received a variance to allow a dock to have a depth permissible by state agencies for the protection of the mangroves to a maximum depth into the waterway of 100 feet from the property line. So this is to provide access and clear all of those mangroves, so the dock is not going to be infringing on any of this dense mangrove forest that's there now. And then obviously it's going to have to be approved by DEP. And this property has also received a height variance for a building height of a maximum building height of 60 feet. The variance has been applied to the 5-story residential commercial building. And I can try and get these elevations. So the property is located within an AE flood zone, and it has a base flood elevation of 5 feet. The minimum required finished floor elevation is 12 inches above the established base flood elevation. Measured from the minimum required finished floor elevation to the highest bearing point of the roof trusses. So here they have the notations of the 12-inch above the base flood elevation is where that building height measurement is going to start. They show you the existing height per the 45-foot building height requirement. This is their variance height of 60 feet, and then they were permitted 10 feet of unoccupied appurtenances, elevator shafts, roof lines. So as long as that's not occupiable space, then that can be applied to that 10 feet of accessory structures. I'm sorry. And those are the main points that I have, and I'll be happy to answer any questions that you may have.
You would have comments for staff?
I have several questions.
Just one second. Go ahead, Lisa.
Okay. It's hard to tell from the drawings and stuff, but could you talk about like green space and bike path or walking paths and biking around there or anything like that? Is there any green space?
The approved landscaping plans, which are not on these slides, but they are available in the packet, show all of the landscaping and green space area. I don't think that there were specifically any kind of sidewalk paths or anything per se for.
No bike paths, no sidewalks, nothing like that?
Well, the Sarasota Lane is actually a vacated roadway, so it's a private road. So really the A1A is the right-of-way, and this roadway here is part of the private property. So there really wouldn't be a requirement to provide sidewalks on this roadway that is going to provide entry into the site.
And no accommodations for bikers? There's nothing in the bikes to park them or anything at the restaurant? We're trying to encourage, that kind of,
To my knowledge, I don't believe that there's bicycle parking provided. It's not necessarily required by code.
encouraged. And can
Yeah,
you-
they provide incentives for reduced parking if you offer those bicycle areas, so that is an incentive, so.
And the townhouses, do they have courtyards behind them? I think that's technically part of the definition of a townhouse. I don't see that. And the parking is supposed to be to the rear of a townhouse?
There are internal parking with under the townhouses, I believe.
Underneath?
There's also underground parking for the residential condominium as well. So I think these were, you might have a little bit of an idea with the elevation plans that were provided in there for the townhouse. It'll kind of show you the front of the building. So I think that there are internal parking garages in each one of those townhouses.
Yeah, those are garages. The townhouses, I guess the code does say they have to have private garden to the rear, and service and parking access is from the rear. I don't know how,
Is that
don't know
is
what
that a
one.
definition from the form-based code? Is a diagram?
it's in the town, it's in figure 2.
Yes, so that is in their town center, our redevelopment zoning district. So those diagrams and setback requirements predominantly apply to that zoning district. This is outside of the redevelopment district, so. That being said, I don't know if it changes the definition of a townhouse, but that's underneath the redevelopment district.
Okay. Garages underneath? In the back? Patios. Oh, okay, thank you. Yeah, that's all I had for now. Thanks.
Ms. Bobo?
Okay. So, in our last slate of hurricanes, we had, I was seeing considerable flooding up on the property. In the west side. Does the stormwater plan address that? I mean, how is that going to be handled?
The specifics, I probably am not be able to provide, but the stormwater, the site is required to retain all of their runoff on site. So the stormwater plan that has been approved here has been approved by the city engineer and the stormwater department, and they have concluded that that does meet the requirements of our code. So they're not allowed to have runoff going out into the river or onto the church property or any other adjacent properties. So they're going to have to demonstrate how they're going to hold all of the stormwater on the site. And through the maintenance stormwater agreements, it's kind of a church property and this property as well being mitigated there.
So that is not, I mean, what they recommend is not part of today's discussion, but they'll be producing some kind of a solution. Is that what you're saying?
I mean, the stormwater maintenance plan has been approved, and during the building process, the building permit process, it's going to obviously be a little bit more detailed with the construction plans. But as to volumes and where things are located, the stormwater and engineering department has approved these as it being acceptable.
Okay. When you showed us the mangroves and where the dock would be located, and it was just a smooth line and all that, is that conceptual where the mangroves could conceivably be located, or are they actually up to that?
This is where they are actually located.
They are actually there?
Yes, in this plan, they'll have to clear a small path to provide access out on. Wish I could put my pointer here, but I can't zoom in. But they'll have to provide a little access way, and then this will clear all of those mangroves. The approved variance, I believe, lies somewhere out here. they weren't maximizing that, but it was done so because it's ultimately going to have to be determined by DEP how far that they can project that dock out. So,
Okay. All right, and on the other side of the property where the restaurant is, the outdoor seating area, and you mentioned the 5 feet
yes.
setback, is that from the edge of the sidewalk?
That would be, the 5-foot setback is from the front property line. So this purple dotted line is the property line, and the red line is the outdoor seating area, and that's where you're gonna have your 5-foot setback there.
Okay.
Obviously, things within this area, depending, site visibility will continue to be reviewed as things develop in that outdoor seating area, because we wouldn't want structures or, any kind of, trying to think of anything that could be installed in that outdoor seating area that could possibly cause any kind of site visibility on that corner, so.
Okay. Those are the only questions I have.
Ms. Snow?
I have some questions. Is the dock a viewing dock, a launch dock, or both? And if it's a launch dock, what is the craft that can be launched from that dock?
I do not believe that there was any proposed dock slips. So it's my understanding, based on the plans, that it's a viewing dock, and I'm not necessarily sure if there would be slips provided. There is a kayak ramp that's proposed there.
So there is a
I'm sure
kayak
the applicant
launch
can
area.
probably provide a little bit more additional detail of the future use of that dock.
And in that same context, the landscape plan kind of shows the dock going right through the mangroves. Is it going over it, over the mangroves, through them? How's that working?
It'll likely have to go through them, but it will have to be done by a licensed mangrove trimmer in accordance with the DEP requirements. They have a, guideline as to how you are able to remove some of those mangroves safely without, creating any damage, so.
And that will require permits from both DEP and the city?
Yes,
Okay.
yes.
Let's stay with landscaping. On the landscaping plan, the townhouses are showing backyard area, little squares, which I guess are patios. But it's also showing zoysia sod, whatever zoysia means, which looks like a big sod area behind each townhouse that's private, but yet it connects. Is that, I assume, going to be all grass, and is it HOA, or is it deeded?
Let me see if I can pull that landscape plan. Oops. It's common area? Oh, so it's common area grass. Okay.
So it'll be common area. I assume that because
Yes.
it's kind of difficult to connect it and have it be deeded. Okay.
Oh, yeah, it's
That's that
kind of
question.
hard to see there.
Where is the reclaimed water line located? Is that on Atlantic Avenue?
I believe it's off of A1A, and then I'm not sure if it runs down Sarasota or not. I just know that it has been confirmed that it serves the property. I do not know where the reclaim
But it's
line is
definitely a
located.
line. There's no well there. It definitely has to
Correct.
hook up to the line. Okay, and is that my only question? Is that it? Oh, you mentioned that the fire department, and you have a plan here that is the fire access plan. The fire marshal approved this plan. I don't see a second means of egress besides Sarasota Lane. That's not required?
I am not sure, but I will confirm that with the fire marshal. I would assume if he has approved that plan, it would not be required, but I can definitely get that confirmation from him directly.
And I think those are my questions for now. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Lenny actually had a question.
Sorry, I had one more about, I see the restaurant sidewalk has a ramp. I assume that's for ADA accessibility.
I believe so.
Is the dock ADA accessible? So many docks that seem like they have stairs up or down. Again, I don't know if they're going through the mangroves over it, but, it'd be a shame to put in a
I'm
new
not
dock
sure
and
the
not
applicant
ADA.
may be able to elaborate on that. I'm sure it's in the plan if I dig through it. But I don't have that information offhand, but I'm sure the applicant can clarify that for you.
Okay, thanks. That's it.
Mr. Trumbull?
I just had a question. Did they, when the engineer did his traffic impact analysis for exiting northbound A1A, did he factor in the new crosswalk? Because it does seem very, very close.
So, the traffic impact study that was done, I believe, was based on 2020 data. So, which was ultimately approved by the city engineer. However, being that there have been a few changes, I'm not sure if it's appropriate to request an updated traffic impact analysis. Because those crosswalks are not referenced in the plan because they weren't even a thought at the time.
And also, there's another pretty sizable condo planned for Surf Drive, right?
Yes.
So would that also be saying the traffic impact analysis would factor in, because that's quite an increase in
I mean,
vehicles
they
and
have an
stuff.
approved height variance. As far as, you know, I don't know how they take future, plans that have not been through site plan. They're not, they're gonna just have an approved height
Fair enough.
variance at
I'm
this
just
point
curious,
now.
yeah, 'cause-
So I'm not sure.
Okay,
So
that's
for
fine.
something like that, when they come in with theirs, then they'll do their own traffic impact study, and then that study will
They can
let
do
us
it
know
like
if
this.
they need to add some type
Okay.
of traffic warning or something of that nature at that point.
Yeah, at that time that this traffic impact study was done, it was determined that travel lane, a turn lane off of that Sarasota Avenue was not required based on the development. So
Because I was thinking like, a remedy if the church will allow, this development to cut through their parking lot to the next road up, that would give them better access to northbound A1A, if you know what I'm saying. Like, I don't know if that's part of the agreement or not, but I was just thinking through like how you could get those vehicles into a better situation.
What? Connected to what, Escambia? Or Pinellas, what is that?
Yeah, what is the next, there's one road up, I'm pretty sure the
Escambia,
church
right?
spans
Manatee and-
two entrances or something.
No, you're talking about going north. It's Escambia, I think.
Yeah,
Yeah, that
I'm
goes-
only just thinking about what I was like, what maybe allow vehicles to not have to try to make a precarious exit onto northbound A1A, that's all. And then on the last, so I was just curious about all that. I don't know if you guys are going to revisit that. And then finally, do you know if they plan on, the mangroves are probably they're beautiful mangroves. Do you know if the developer plans on trimming, or will they left intact and allowed to continue to grow as they normally do? Will they be trimmed back? Because I could see where potentially could obstruct some of the views of the property owners, and they may want the mangroves trimmed.
I would say if the mangroves are at a trimmable height, because I know once they reach, I think, above 6 feet, you are now able to trim them, that they will have them done by a licensed mangrove trimmer in accordance with the DEP requirements.
Okay.
Otherwise, they wouldn't be permitted to touch them per DEP, so.
Okay, yeah, and I think the motorized vessels, actually, the MPP plan applies to that area. So I'd be surprised if if they're ever able to get any boat lifts or be heavily restricted, because there was a previous property owner who decided to totally walk all over that, and he got into a lot of trouble, if you recall. So,
I don't recall any boat lifts or any type of, docking facilities on this residential dock.
yeah, and I think like there's actually another property close by that I think they're not allowed to even allow docking. I mean, they don't even have boat lifts, but I think they're even restricted to even allow a boat to tie up to the dock.
I think that's where I live.
That's
And
where you
it's a
live, that's where you
viewing-
live. No, I think it's because
And it's a
there's an
viewing
MPP
dock.
Yeah, but I think it's the MPP plan that restricts that, I don't know.
It's a viewing dock, and apparently when that development was approved back in 2012, I think the mangroves also some of them had to be removed so that the dock could go out. The same kind of situation, and you can trim them with a licensed mangrove trimmer, I guess is what you call them, once they go over 6 feet.
Nice. But that looks like a really nice project. It should be really pretty. It's a nice addition to the city.
You have a question?
That was it.
Good.
Those really traffic things, really my main questions. So.
I do have a couple questions and comments. In regards to the traffic study, I am concerned. It's from 2018 or 2019 data with the build year of 2020. It does not take into account the crossings, so I would recommend that we request an updated traffic study.
Yeah, and I just want to point out that this project has been under review for several years now, just based on things that have happened, and so that would be why that traffic impact study is out of date. They didn't supply one that was out of date, so it just working through the process, it became out of date. So
The existing sidewalk that goes along A1A, right there as it approaches Sarasota Lane, it kind of bends back and crosses the property line. I did not see, is there an easement allowing that to come over onto private property?
I don't believe that there's any kind of encroachment over that front property line. The encroachment of the
If you zoom in
sidewalk?
right there, right next to Sarasota Lane, the sidewalk encroaches over onto the property. It's there now, but they're taking it out and replacing it.
You think this, you say they're straightening it?
It's on the south
straightening it?
side of Sarasota Lane, right by the backflow preventer and all that kind
Right
of
here.
fun stuff. Yes.
Very hard to see.
Just need to check it, and if
Oh,
there's,
yeah, I see what you're saying, where
if
it's
there's
not
not an
lining.
easement, there needs to be one.
Okay.
Also on the landscape plan, right there, I mean, we've got a backflow preventer standing there. We got, they've planted podocarpus around that. That can get out of control real quick.
Yeah.
And can block sight lines. I'm concerned about that particular type of plant being placed there.
They would have to,
That's an
yeah, they would have to
excellent point.
keep it trimmed to where it wasn't going to obstruct within, a certain height. So, that is.
We've got a lot of places
being that it-
around town
yeah.
that they're supposed to keep it trimmed.
Correct,
and you
being the
cannot see.
fact that it could potentially get that to that height.
Also on the lighting plan, in looking at the photometric plan, where'd it go? Along the north side of, again, we have a lot of streets in town that are very, very dark. And on the north side of Sarasota Lane, we've got light levels of 0.0, 0.1, which is almost nothing. And so now we're creating another situation where we have a street that's very dark. Also on the north end of the condo building, we got a sidewalk that goes around through there with low light levels. It could be a safety issue.
In regards to the property line, so we do have requirements for commercial developments. So measured at the property line, it can be no more than 0.2 foot candles. So that is a code requirement to prevent, light trespass onto adjacent properties. But that being an access,
That's my
way,
concern, that it's
yeah.
an access that,
so I think that there can be certain lighting installations installed that's not going to, still provide adequate lighting to where it's shaded down, and it's not going to increase those foot candles at the property line while still maintaining the adequate safety.
I mean,
for
even at the
lighting.
center line of the road, they're still down in the
Right.
half a foot candle, again, which is pretty low. And like I said, one of my biggest concerns is the light levels at the end of the north end of the building. There is a sidewalk there where people could be walking, and there are several spots there that are very, very dark that could, and one of them is right outside of a doorway that could be a safety issue. And I guess my last question, just to confirm, the ground floor is parking only, no living space?
On the condominium?
On the condo.
Yes, ground floor is the parking.
Okay.
I just have one more point I just want to confirm that that staff is comfortable with the environmental impact report as submitted by the applicant?
It has been reviewed. It's basically telling us of the conditions of the site.
Right.
So, I mean, I would agree that that is what's there now, and that the fact that this development is attempting to improve some of those things, like those invasive species and things like that. I mean, I'm not an environmental scientist, but
Right, but I just want,
but
my
yes.
question is that you're comfortable if they've dotted every I and crossed every T and
yes,
did
the
everything?
environmental analysis isn't necessarily something that's required, so that's something that they've decided to provide in addition, so.
Okay.
Any other questions from the board?
What can you tell us about the proposed pool to be developed by others?
That's probably just per different contractor. So the applicant can probably elaborate, but typically they're not going to do engineering designs on that pool. They're going to let a pool contractor who is unknown at this point pursue those engineering plans. So I'm thinking that that's what that note is referencing.
Okay, so I guess there's just a plan to have a pool there and it's not
Correct.
all
This is the
figured out by
location
now.
where the pool is going, and it's up to another contractor to provide the full-blown engineering plans and all of that for the pool.
I'm sorry, one more thing. Since this is a combination of condominium and townhouse, is it going to be one condominium association and one HOA for the townhouses, or with a master, or you're going to combine it? How's that plan?
I think the applicant is probably better to answer that than myself about how that's going to work out. I would assume that it's all under one condo association, but he can elaborate on the townhouses and how they're going to be done. So.
Okay. Next, we'll hear from the applicant.
Thank you. There were a lot of questions. I probably should have taken notes, a lot more than I expected. My name is Bruce Moy. I'm the project engineer. I'm the president of MBB Engineering. Probably should know better. I'm on a couple of P&Z boards myself, and sometimes the questions get asked at this stage. We are basically what we hope to be is complete. We've been permitting this through the city, through your staff, through the DOT, through the St. John's, through the DEP. So we've been through all the agencies. We're actually, just to give you an idea where we are, we have no more DOT comments, and DOT regulates the access roadway, the drainage, and the utility work that we're doing in the A1A right-of-way. St. John's obviously is the stormwater and the dock, and DEP is water and sewer. And then, of course, your permit as well. I'll start with some of the easier questions, like the pool question. Yes, we do that very frequently on site plans where we don't do the actual design because it goes through the building permit process. We just show, that there's going to be pool here, and that permit gets pulled by others, and that those will be a separate submittal to your building department that will get reviewed very thoroughly, because there's a lot of requirements for public pools that we don't do at this level. Start with stormwater, since that's what I kind of know best. This has to meet not only the city of Cocoa Beach's requirements, but also has to meet the DOT requirements and the St. John's requirements. The DOT being the strictest. This is designed for a 100-year storm, everywhere from 1 hour to a 10-day duration, because they don't want any of this water going into the right-of-way. So our system is designed for a 100-year storm. I understand that there's flood issues, and currently this is in a flood zone, but that property will get elevated so that we don't, hopefully, that river water won't be coming onto the site. All the stormwater will be stored in our ponds until it ultimately discharges to the river after it's been properly treated. The sidewalk, just to elaborate, yes, the Sarasota is not a road, it is a private drive. It was vacated a long time ago. So it's unique to where we don't have those sidewalk requirements like you do on a roadway, but being that the one on A1A is existing, we're doing a actual tie-in so that people that are walking on the sidewalk can come into the restaurant through a new sidewalk connection. so that they can adequately access the site without going onto the drive. As far as joint access between parcels, there's no really agreement. That doesn't mean that people won't drive through that way if they feel that it's in their best interest, but there's no agreement other than the shared parking agreement and the fact that they can share Sarasota, as they do already. The lighting is really not, that's something we sub out. We just do a photometrics plan to show that we meet the code, which is kind of tricky because if you require a certain level at the property line, it's hard to light it so that you cover everything and still fall within your code. But from what my understanding is that will be better reviewed at the building department level because that's through a life safety issue and they have to meet the life safety codes. So lighting will be reassessed at that level. The association will be a master association because it's one big common property, and they will probably have sub-associations for the condo and possibly the townhome. Those documents are being drafted as we speak to set that up because there has to be maintenance entities established for our St. John's permit. Our St. John's permit has been, is almost approved. There's still some discussion about the mangroves and how we're going to get through them. We're working with them through our environmental scientists to make sure that that gets permitted properly and we don't do anything to the mangroves that we're not supposed to do. And we purposely, requested the variance so we could push it west to not interfere with any of the existing mangroves as we parallel the shoreline. Trimming would be done as whatever's allowed by the state because they dictate that. What were some of the other questions? The traffic study. So we have to submit the traffic study to the DOT because that's their roadway. They were fully aware, obviously they're fully aware there's going to be a pedestrian crossing there that they're proposing, and that's been taken into account through the design process. You don't put a pedestrian crossing in a traffic study, so the traffic study should still be valid. In addition, when the traffic goes under concurrency, those trips should be accounted for in any project that follows this project. So if they're not included in ours, they should be included in those other projects that came in after us, because those are basically vested trips for us for this project. If I missed anything, feel free to ask me any questions.
Is the dock ADA?
Everything will be ADA, yes, the
dock, everything?
the dock will be ADA, as will all the sidewalks and any pathways that are required for egress and emergency.
Bike parking, I know this is like sort of one of my things, but we're trying to encourage less traffic, car traffic and more bikes, so I don't know that there's a place for bikes to come up and down in that area. It's gotten more popular, that area, for bikers.
Okay.
Up here.
Is it a requirement?
It's not a requirement,
Oh.
no.
It's not a.
I mean, we'll talk to them, see if that's something they're planning on, but, usually we just respond to comments as we get them. We don't, sometimes we'll offer stuff because the applicant just wants to have it. I know this community is probably, people use bikes probably more so here than they do in other communities, so definitely something we'll consider, especially if we see the need for it.
Thank you.
So I was wondering about where the dockage is placed, and I know it was angled to go along the shoreline of the mangroves so as not to, also to minimize minimize any interference with the condominium, which is just immediately to the north.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't ultimately know if this is kind of like a joint decision as to where it's laid out, but are you trying to minimize as much as possible, any interruption to that condo to the north? And I don't remember the name of the condo, but.
Yeah, we're required to keep a certain distance from that common property line, so we're meeting that. And we have had the in St. John's. We've been on on-site meetings to try to coordinate the location of that crossing to make sure we minimize any impact to the mangroves.
So you're finding that kind of like that middle ground, between protecting the mangroves and not getting too far out into the waterway.
Correct. Yeah, we're trying to stay as close to the edge of the mangroves as possible.
Any other questions for the applicant?
Thank you. And of course, we respectfully request that you approve our application. Thank you.
All right, next up, any members of the public who wish to comment on this matter?
I just have a quick question. The builder normally puts together the homeowners
Name and
association.
address, please.
Melissa Byron, 3165 North Atlantic Avenue, Cocoa Beach. The builder usually puts together the documents for a homeowners association to start them out. Are they going to consider a restriction for vacation rentals? That's been a huge problem with us in the city. And homeowners associations and condominium associations can restrict the rentals of their property. I'm just curious, is that going to be taken into consideration when they create the documents?
Can you please come up to the microphone?
Come on up to the mic.
State your name.
Hi, my name's Ray Coudrier, and I'm one of the owners of the property. Harry and I were talking about this as far as my partner, and we're wondering if the townhouses should have some short-term rentals or not, and not the condos, because you wouldn't want it in the condos. But we haven't finalized that at all as far as, there's pluses and minuses to it, and we definitely wouldn't want it on the condos, especially at those price ranges. And the townhouses are kind of a different entity, so we're looking at that, but nothing has been 100% finalized on that.
Well, there's short-term rentals and then there's really short-term rentals.
Right, exactly right.
I think the city is moving in the direction of trying as hard as it possibly can to limit the really short-term rentals. Most multifamily developments are going to either 6 months or 3 month minimum.
Yes. I mean, if I owned a condo there, I wouldn't want somebody spending every other weekend somebody else is
I
in
think
there.
the same goes
I
with
agree.
townhouses.
I agree with that. Yep. Sure.
Can I ask him a question? You mentioned prices. What were the range of prices for these? I mean, I saw on the feedback that I got from the school, they're anticipating possibly 6 kids, so it sounds like it's not family affordable. So where are we at with those?
I'm sorry, say that again, 6 kids?
Yeah, what are your price ranges for these? Like, are they family affordable?
The townhouses would be more pricely affordable, but due to construction costs and putting 110-foot pilings in the ground for the condos, it's going to be in the higher end there. Otherwise, the project's not feasible. Can't.
I just wanted to add that on the school board concurrency, townhouses and condos are considered multifamily, and they have historically a very low number of students per unit, more so than single family.
And I do like the bike rack idea
Most of our
at the
single
restaurant, and I
families
think
are
that would
Airbnb
be
right
big,
now, so.
especially as people are now,
Yeah.
even electric bikes and other bikes, yes. I think that's a big plus. Put a note down.
Wondering.
This is a question for the board, basically. A last development that was brought to the city commission was up at 520 and the Relief Bridge. And there was restrictions put in there that there could be no short-term rentals in it. I'm wondering, is that can the planning board add a restriction to no short-term rentals? Just as a resident in 1,100 short-term rentals in Cocoa Beach.
Are we down 300?
Chair, I'd be glad to address that question for any members of the board. Oh,
Sorry, can I just ask one more question? Were any of these units ever being set aside at a lower price point to draw in more families to the area?
The cost of the land and the cost of development, the cost of construction is, it is what it is.
Right,
So-
so you're not doing this for free.
But we're not, this is not, there's not, I wish it was some more lower income housing or more affordable housing, I should say, so residents and people that are working in the area can afford it. But there's no way that just works and the numbers don't work on this and because of the cost. I mean, I'm sure you see what everything's been construction and block and everything, it's not going down, it's just going up.
Thank you.
Any other questions or comments from the public? Okay, Mr. Buss, if you will address that.
sure. Yeah, just to that point there, that project that was referenced over there off 520, yeah. That project was leveraging a particular provision in your code relating to density variances, okay? In particular, it is one of the many conditions of a density variance. In order to qualify for that, you'd have a restriction as a covenant running with the land to restrict against short-term rentals, against vacation rentals. That is not a condition that the planning board or the city commission could just impose or impose as just a condition of approval generally.
But if I may, but I do think that maybe not the planning board, but the city commission could, in the case of density bonuses, impose a affordable housing condition, whereas 10% of the units, if you're you're being given a density bonus from 50 units to 60 units, 10% of your units, whether they be strictly limited to the density bonus amount of units or the entire development is really up to the city commission, would be set aside for affordable housing.
There are tools that can be implemented for affordable housing, and they're usually structured, as you point out, in terms of bonuses as opposed to requirements.
Yeah, which is something I'd love to see the city do.
Okay. Any additional comments, rebuttal, or closing statements from the applicant or staff?
One other comment, somebody asked about the dock and blocking the view. We are having a setback, and don't forget the church owns property to the north of us, and then there's a setback on the other side, so there really is a difference. It kind of looks like we own that whole thing, but we don't. It's where the purple line is, and then the church owns to the north of us, so there's another, green area to the north of us.
Okay.
I have one. I just wanted a clarification. When you went over saying they were going to be Florida-friendly landscaping, is there a reason it can't just be native Florida? And
I think they're kind of interchangeable, so maybe I just dropped off the native Florida-friendly landscaping is what I should have said, just to clarify.
okay.
Well, like the zoysia grass we were talking about earlier, it takes less water and stays greener, and it takes less cutting, and it's cleaner looking. It's not golf course grass, but it's not,
So how much of it is it zero maintenance and sustainable for the efforts of like runoff and stuff like that?
I don't know. I'd have to ask our landscape architect
Yeah.
on that. But she's done several projects in Cocoa Beach area. We use a lot of the local people for our engineering, for our architectural, and we didn't go get somebody from Houston or something that doesn't understand how Florida works. We want to comply with the way Florida works and, clean that river up and make it look greener.
Learn something tonight. There's always-
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, we'll now close the public hearing. I guess, next, can I have a motion?
Okay, let me just see. Let me just see where the motion is.
I'm trying to find it too.
Christie, can you help me? Where's the motion on this? Oh, I think I found sample motion. I move forward. Oh, okay. Nope, that's the wrong one. Hold on. What the maximum height? Nope, that's the wrong one. D1? C1? Okay, C1, page 4. Found it. I move to forward the site plan to the city commission with a recommendation of approval.
Do you have a second?
A second.
All right, any further discussion? Question?
I have one more question for Wade. So are you saying that the association cannot implement a resident-only complex?
Oh, no, an association can.
But not in the city.
Yeah, an association can choose to implement implement a restriction on transient rentals or vacation rentals, absolutely. What I'm saying is that the city cannot require that to be part of their HOA restrictions as a condition of approval.
Any further discussion? All right, we'll call for a vote. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? All right, passes 5-0. All right, up next is number 2, Land Development Code, amend Chapter 3, Article 3, Section 3-35, permit the sale of frozen prepackaged food from mobile food dispensing vehicles within the public right-of-way.
Can I ask a question about this, or do we have to do something first?
Let's let Christie make a presentation first.
Okay. All right, so agenda item C2, to amend the Land Development Code, Chapter 3, Article 3, Section 3-35, temporary and portable structures to permit the sale of frozen packaged food from mobile food dispensing vehicles within the public right-of-way. So there's been some confusion recently regarding the mobile food dispensing vehicles operating in the city of Cocoa Beach. There was state law that had passed, I believe, in 2020 that limited our ability to regulate food trucks. So the city went forward and drafted some, I'm sorry, I take that back, to require permitting for food trucks. So the city, and basically, we weren't allowed to prohibit them either. So the city went ahead and drafted some regulation language about how they can operate and where they can operate. And the traditional ice cream man that kind of drives around the neighborhood kind of wasn't considered when we were drafting that language. So what's happened is that there's been no distinction between the mobile food dispensing vehicles, food trucks, and the traditional ice cream man sales. So right now, they're prohibited from operating in the public right-of-way unless they're part of a special event. So there have been several inquiries from these traditional style, ice cream guys that go around the neighborhood and kind of just sell ice cream. So the city commission had a discussion at their March 3rd meeting talking about the possibility of these ice cream trucks operating within the public right-of-way, and staff has taken that discussion and proposed some changes to allow these ice cream food trucks to operate. The city has identified the RS1 single-family residential zoning district as a potential operation area due to the fact that these areas are primarily located within low-density neighborhoods with less traffic and lower speeds. This is our zoning map currently, and everything in yellow. The bright yellow is going to be that RS1 zoning district. So predominantly it's all west of A1A, but we do have some up north that is east of A1A and some down south here. So we're also proposing that there be no stops on state roads just for traffic purposes. We don't want any kind of incidences with that. And then the stops to be limited no more than 5 minutes to prevent any kind of potential conflicts with the surrounding, communities, having a food, ice cream vendor parked in front of your house for 25 minutes kind of deal. So those are the changes that staff has proposed, and the proposed amendments have been provided as Exhibit A. And if you have any questions, I'll be happy to address them.
Ms. McGinnis?
I was just wondering what liberties people would take with that amendment. There are always going to be liberties taken. So what can we think of that would not be cool? Can we just say ice cream truck, or do you have to say frozen?
Well,
food
this
package?
language was drafted by our city attorney.
Okay.
So, and with the exception of the, zoning district and the stopping and everything, but the actual language that's identifying these separately from a regular food truck was drafted by the city attorney.
Right. So what's behind that? A truck with a microwave? I mean,
Yeah, so this is tracking in part some additional statutory language
okay.
that we have in the DBPR and the Department of Business and Professional Regulation statutes that get into the weeds of this. Basically, as was discussed, when the mobile food dispensing vehicles definition was being implemented, we went with a whole hog definition, and subsequently DBPR has cut out things like, what did we call it? Frozen prepackaged food, dispensing and so on from their state definition. Our definition here still applies.
Okay.
Yeah, your question is a fair one. What unintended consequences are there? This was drafted to get at prepackaged ice cream. Now, keep in mind the distinction here, and this is a distinction that's in the state statute as well. We're talking about wrapped up ice cream, or ice cream in a little thing you take off and what have you, and you hand out, as opposed to dispensing. You see what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm. So like Fat Tuesdays is not gonna.
What's that?
Fat Tuesdays isn't gonna roll up. It's a frozen drink.
Right. Well, yeah, and yeah, that's got its own issues. If it were alcohol based, that would have other things covered here. So,
Ms. Carl was first, and then
I don't know if this applies, but sometimes like the ice cream truck would go to a park, a city park, while they're having, they've rented the pavilion or whatever, and have them come there during the party, birthday party or whatever. Can they still do
Yes,
that for 5
they
or
would
10
still,
minutes?
yes, they would
and not-
still be permitted as part of a special event.
That's considered a special event
correct,
if you've
yes.
rented the space or the pavilion or the.
And
okay.
just regular, food trucks, taco trucks, any type of those food trucks would also be permitted to operate at that location where that approved special event is located, whether that be a school or the beach or a public park.
Thank you. And I think you already answered, it doesn't include like a snow cone making. That's not part of this definition, like snow cone or the ices that are kind of fancy now, or that's
I
a
would not say
dispensing
that
thing,
those
or
are
is that
prepackaged.
yeah,
unless it's prepackaged.
Yeah, the qualification here of it being prepackaged, it would the Kona Ice, for example, is
Kona
one
Ice, yeah,
brand.
that's what I'm thinking.
Right.
That would not.
That would not be encompassed in this. There's actually another definition, if I recall correctly, in the DBPR regulations that address that particular thing, where it's literally just ice and then some liquid additive. But this was zeroed in. The request was very particular to what you think of traditional ice cream trucks, going around, ringing a bell, what have you. And that's what was contemplated in an ice cream truck situation is prepackaged. Again, this does not in any way, the regulations that exist right now regulate food trucks in operating from public right-of-ways, i.e. streets, okay, or on city-owned property, unless it's part of a special event. So for example, if you had a birthday party and you wanted to bring Kona Ice out there and you rented a pavilion, that's a special event for our purposes here, and they're allowed to be there for it.
I was going to make sure that was part of a special event, that it's still okay to do that. Thank you.
I have a problem with this on a couple of different levels. I don't know how the 5-minute restriction is going to be enforced. I can't imagine. I mean, if it takes 10 minutes, it takes 15 minutes, it takes 20 minutes. Who is going to enforce 5 minutes? We have 3 ice cream stores and 1 new gelato shop in the city of Cocoa Beach. And these are people who invested their money and their time and their sweat and all those wonderful things into the city. And I just don't think that we should be in the business of coming up with things to hurt any existing businesses. And going from the sublime to the ridiculous, I'm going to take it, I think you alluded to, how do you stop this from being abused? I sell shrimp prepackaged, frozen. And I can drive around my truck because it's prepackaged and it's frozen, and I can sell it on the street, right?
Anybody's going to buy it.
People buy, I mean, if it's there, they'll buy it. So you can, there is room here for abuse. Okay. That's all.
And it's just for sale, right? Like if you're selling it, like if someone were to have something for, maybe with people who don't have the traditional kitchen for a more houseless population and they had frozen things, would it apply to them if they were doing like something in the community? They're not selling it, they're giving it away. It's just for people who are selling.
I'd need to go back and look at our definition of mobile food dispensing vehicles in the first place to see if it would have any applicability. Because keep in
A
mind,
mobile pantry, if you will.
what we're talking about is we're talking about creating an exemption to our existing mobile food dispensing regulations. I can take a very quick look at that if you'd like. It'll take me a second though.
Yeah, I just don't want to impede anybody trying to do good work either.
Any other questions, comments?
I have one more.
Okay.
Is there a limit on the number of trucks? Like if 15 trucks came and said they wanted to do this, can you permit 15 or is it limited to like?
I believe per the state statute, we are not able to limit the number within the city. Once Wayne's finished with that, he can.
Not able to what, I'm sorry?
Limit the number of these types of ice cream trucks.
Yeah,
We can't,
we've got some pretty somewhat broad preemptions from the legislature. One of the preemptions with regard to anything of any species of mobile food dispensing vehicles, we are not allowed to license them. And by license, that would mean license, for example, a certain number of them and no more. So limiting to a certain number is not one of the regulations we have available to us. Whether that will come to be or not,
Can I ask, where did this come from?
Would you like to answer that, or I know a
We
little
have
bit of
had
it?
several requests from these ice cream vendors to operate within the city. I believe traditionally, and this is prior to the food truck language being implemented and the state law, so historically they have been allowed per a solicitor's permit. So the city has issued those in the past. Since we've updated this language in 2020, I believe there's been maybe 1 or 2 inquiries regarding this and being upset about the city eliminating the traditional ice cream neighborhood truck. So that's initially where this has come from. So.
Chairman, to the question before, and Ms. McKinley, to make sure I understand your question correctly, this exception to the regulation here, I don't think is going to make anything any stricter. So I'll take what I think your question may be, which is, do our regulations of mobile food dispensing vehicles regulate or restrict someone giving away food?
Frozen in a package.
What's that?
Frozen in a package. Yeah,
Well, but
just to go by the.
keep in mind, we already have regulations on mobile food dispensing vehicles, okay? And mobile food dispensing vehicles are not allowed to operate within the public right-of-way or any city-owned property, all right? That's all of them. That includes ones currently that do frozen prepackaged food or do other things, all right? So regular food trucks, right? I think it would turn on the particular facts of what you were referencing, handing out, food for consumption or anything like that. I think under the state law, even if they were handing out food for consumption, and the definition is sold for consumption, prepared, served, or sold, so served, even if not for money, sold for consumption on or in the vicinity of the premises, all right? So food that's ready to eat right then. If you had a mobile pantry that's handing out, a bag of flour or handing out, a box of cereal or something like that, I don't think it falls under this definition, all right? And this, by the way, what we're looking at is a definition of a public food service establishment. That is a definition that comes straight from the Florida statutes, all right? So whether we get into the situation of any of that, if they're just handing out, foods to go home and cook or anything like that, it's probably not going to fall under this definition. If they're handing out food, ready to eat right then, whether they're charging for it or not, it means two things. It means, one, they're probably going to have to be licensed and regulated by the state anyways to do that, because they're cooking food and giving it to people, right? Whether they're charging for it or not. And then it may fall under this if they're doing it in the street, right? See what I'm saying? So that's what we're getting at to that piece. But this kind of carve out for frozen prepackaged food isn't going to make it any stricter, to your point.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions, comments? All right, any comments from the public?
Melissa Byron, 3165 North Atlantic Avenue. Let me see if I understand this. We've had 1 to 2 to 3 people complain about this, that they want to have an ice cream truck. And we have an LDC that is our roadmap to what we do in the city and what we allow. And so we're going to go ahead and change the LDC because 1 to 3 people have decided they would like to dispense on our streets in Cocoa Beach. Is that what I'm hearing? Okay, I will take that as a yes, that's what I'm hearing. I think that I'm not against ice cream. I think ice cream is great, but we also have business owners in the city limits of Cocoa Beach that sell ice cream, they sell gelato, they have businesses here, and competing with them on residential streets, I think, is atrocious. Why would you want to do that? Why would you want to do something that you don't have to? You do not have to do this. Prepackaged frozen food. I have meat, I have shrimp, I got anything else I want to freeze, I can go sell on any street I want in Cocoa Beach if this passes. I just don't think that's what Cocoa Beach wants. I don't think you want to have a vendor going up and down the residential areas and, with the music or with the hawking or whatever they're going to do to try to sell you free packaged frozen foods. So I think this is a no-brainer. The LEDC has served us well up until this point. Let's leave it the way it is and not make a change.
Any additional public comment? All right. Do I have a motion?
I have a question for Wade.
Yes, ma'am.
So what I'm hearing is that the LDC currently has in place that it doesn't allow for these ice cream trucks, I guess, assuming they're ice cream trucks. And, I mean, would voting for this be a violation of that? I mean, is that what I'm hearing?
It's
Just to
not a
confirm.
violation of it. You're recommending, if you were to vote, if there were a motion and a second, and then a vote in favor of recommending to the city commission to revise it with this language, it's not a violation of the land development regulations. It's a recommendation to change it.
Oh, I see.
I move to forward to the city commission the proposed amendments with the discussed changes to the Cocoa Beach Code, Land Development Code, with a recommendation of denial.
Do I have a second? All right, so got a question. What happens now? We don't have a second.
Yeah.
Motion dies.
Yep. See if there are any more motions.
Are there any more motions?
Sorry, I guess I have a clarification again. So without this language added, without the change,
No ice cream trucks.
no ice cream trucks. We've had ice cream trucks. I mean, let's be honest, I've seen them.
Or frozen shrimp. No frozen shrimp. Sorry.
So I don't know. I mean, what, they've been around, and you're saying this doesn't affect a special event at all. They're allowed to do that now, and will, whether this gets changed or not. But we've had ice cream trucks in neighborhoods, so I don't know what's stopping them, or I guess they weren't allowed or permitted, so I don't really know how that works.
Yeah, regulation of food trucks, all right, of mobile food dispensing vehicles were implemented in the LDRs. When did we add it? Back in 2020. Okay, so we didn't have, as I recall,
It was in October of 2020.
yeah, I don't know that we actually had any regulations on the books with regard to any sort of food trucks at all, okay? In the absence of any regulations on the books, it was kind of ironic. The legislature passed this partial preemption and said, oh, local governments, there are certain things you can't do to regulate mobile food dispensing vehicles. And that, in fact, prompted cities and counties all over the state and said, oh, we don't regulate them at all, do we? And they jumped on it and implemented some regulations, okay? Regulations were implemented in the LDRs in 2020 in Cocoa Beach. And one of those regulations was prohibiting them, and this is, generally when you're talking about food trucks, it's considered a safety matter, prohibiting them in the right of way, right? So the idea of even a gourmet food truck that does really nice gourmet stuff, but just randomly parking in front of somebody's house at 10 a.m. and sitting there for 6 hours and what have you, or on a busy street or this and that, whatever, these regulations get implemented. In the course of all this, ice cream trucks were encompassed within that regulation. So that's kind of the progression of what it was. It doesn't surprise me that in the past prior to 2020, there were ice cream trucks cruising through Cocoa Beach. But that's
Even
kind of
more
historically
recently,
what happened.
just saying. I've seen them.
I've seen some as well more recently, and because we were talking about bringing this before you guys and trying to figure out where, whether or not these were regulated, we haven't enforced them not being out there, but if you guys decide that you don't want them, then we're definitely going to have to enforce the code.
Thanks.
Any other motions?
I'd just like to make a couple points, if that's okay.
Sure.
There's the commercial ice cream outlets, in the public areas that capture a whole lot of traffic. They don't lack for any business. It's not like an ice cream truck going up and down a street is going to, steal even a small percentage of their business. Nor would the market realistically support too many trucks. I mean, if you had 10 trucks going out, they'd soon learn that they wouldn't get enough business up and down residential neighborhoods, and some of them would just naturally drop out. So you would end up, with, just, I don't know, a couple. I don't think it would really explode or become a nuisance, and that's my opinion.
But we don't know that.
Yeah, I agree. I don't think it's going to hurt local businesses. I think they're going to get very little volume from kids in neighborhoods, and I think people want to go out and get ice cream later in the evenings. The tourists, they go to the ice cream shops. They're out trying to flag down an ice cream truck, so I don't think it's going to hurt the local businesses.
Okay. So do I have a motion for approval?
I'll submit a motion to approve.
Do I have a second?
I'll second it.
All right, any further discussion? All right, all in favor say aye. Aye. All opposed?
No.
All right, passes 4-1. Item C3, Land Development Code, amend Chapter 2, Article 3, Section 2-06 to provide a flood protection height exemption.
It's on. You're next on the agenda.
Decided to become an HOA, they could then restrict.
Isn't this habitable? You can go ahead and.
It's yours is on. It's just keeps popping up. There you go.
Hello, planning board members. It's nice to meet you. I think this is my first time here meeting you guys and presenting a project before you guys. So it's nice to meet you. Hope to meet you again sometime soon. Maybe just to get to know each other. So this situation came about because of a resident within the city who's planning to demolish his home and rebuild. And at this time, he's looking at, and as it explained in the briefing, he's looking at building his house in order to meet, hurricane standards and to ensure his property in that regard. So one of the things that's coming about with the new FEMA regulations started in 2021 is risk rating 2.0. And I'm sure probably most people here have heard about it, maybe know a lot of information about it, some maybe not. This new FEMA regulation is in order, they looked at all of the flood rate maps and insurance ratings, and they decided that the way they were currently charging for flood insurance was not fair to some, and so they decided to do, I guess, with new technology, they was able to come up with some different models, and they think that they can create a more fair process when it comes to flood insurance risk. So one of the things that they're looking at overall is proximity to water. could increase your flood insurance rates, which I'm sure, again, most of you guys have heard about. So the senior executive from FEMA National Flood Insurance has decided that by doing this, they empower policyholders to make informed decisions to protect their homes and businesses for life-changing flood events that will strike in the months and years ahead due to climate change. So, talking about risk, I'm sure you guys have probably had a chance to look at some of these maps. Category 1 storm, Cocoa Beach probably gets some flooding, but not too bad. Category 2, you start to see 3-foot flooding in some areas of Cocoa Beach. Category 3, more 3-foot and above flooding going on in the city of Cocoa Beach. Everything in yellow is where you see the 3-foot and above. Category 4, that's the same storm that Hurricane Ian was, and it was a high-end Category 4, and this is the type of flooding that we would see in Cocoa Beach. And a lot of that you can see is red, so that's 9-foot and above.
Could you say that again? I'm sorry. The red was what?
The red is 9-foot and above, and that's a Category 4 if it hit Cocoa Beach. Category 5, we're pretty much, everybody's in the red, and again, 9-foot and above. Most likely those storms go up into the 15-foot range.
And those are projected, not actuals. We've not had.
Yeah, this is from the National Hurricane Center storm surge projections for Cocoa Beach. And this is what they experienced in Ian, in the Gulf. So
Have we had 9-foot surges? I don't.
Have we ever had any here?
Yeah, in any of these flood zones. I've not seen that high, but I don't think anywhere close. But
Have you guys ever had a Category 4 storm?
yes.
Well,
It also depends upon tides. And there's a lot of, this is projected the absolute worst.
Yeah, I'm just saying it's not actuals, it's projections based on.
yes,
climate
these are
change.
all projections. Again, this is
We've
talking
never
about
actually
risk.
seen this.
When we talk about risk, we're talking about projections, things that could happen, not necessarily will happen, and how do you want to protect your home or how do you want to build your property to mitigate your risk. And so that's why I asked the question, what can we do now? FEMA recommends raising the elevation to lower your risk. Building code requirements may change over time due to flood risk changes, maps being updated. And FEMA actually recommends that if you're remodeling or rebuilding or consider to elevate your flood to your flood risk. So most of the time in our building code, we require that you do a 1-foot freeboard, which is 1 foot above whatever the BFE is, base flood elevation, based on FEMA flood maps.
But you can do
they
more.
also-
You can do more. It's not a hard, like, you can only do 1 foot. You could do more if you wanted to.
Yes, you can.
Okay.
Yes, you can.
So it's allowed today in the code. Our code will allow you to exceed the 1 foot. You could do 4 feet above or 5 feet. Just making sure I understand that.
Yes.
Okay.
Does the city have
So-
a history of what's actually happened in the last, let's say, 10 years as far as flood?
Let's let her finish her presentation, then we can ask questions.
I was just going to suggest that. Thank you so much. So, again, you can lower your flood risk and lower your insurance rate by reducing and reduce your financial impacts when you elevate your property. This is a FEMA requirement. This is not from the city. Recommendation. What does elevation look like? So, basically, probably everybody here has seen this picture or representation before. Just want to make sure that maybe people visiting will have a good idea of what it looks like as well. So again, FEMA recommends that if you're going to elevate 3 to 4 feet, that you consider elevating a full story. And the reason that they do that is because if your current flood elevation is at 3 to 4 feet, as maps change, climate change happen, it's probably gonna go higher. So right now you can elevate, they're saying, go ahead and do the whole story, which would be the 10-foot that this guy is asking for. And this is some examples of what that could look like in Cocoa Beach. So we have a 1-story house on the right. They've elevated about 9 feet right there. And then on the left, we have a 2-story house, which is elevated about, I would say about 6 feet. So this is some of the type of structures that we were talking about because I didn't actually write that language. That was written by Randy, so I'm just bringing that for you today because he retired, of course. But when he wrote it, he talked about frangible construction, which everything underneath the house is non-occupiable. Only thing you can use it for is parking or storage. But you also build around it to make it look like a nice structure, not just, stilts standing out. Sometimes you've seen those on the coast, so that's one of the things that he added in that language. And when you do this, what was taken into consideration as well is the lot sizes. So if you have a kind of a small lot and you can only elevate to, say if you can elevate to 10 feet, say if that's what FEMA requires, now you have to spread your house out in order to get more square footage. So now you're taking up more room on the site opposed to being able to do some low impact development and things of that nature. So our current code, LDC, as you stated, allows you to elevate up to 1 foot above FEMA's requirements. So that's what we call 1 foot freeboard. And then we also have our code references 337, which gives you more detailed instructions about the 40-foot height requirements within the city. So I think what Randy expressed to me and what I'm bringing before you today is that in some ways these two codes kind of contradict each other when you get to the fact that if you need to elevate a full 10 foot and then you want to do 2 stories, you can easily get into that 45-foot range. So what the customer is asking or the constituent is asking and what Randy told me to bring before you guys is to consider making some exceptions for someone who needs to elevate to the 10 foot. So this is the proposed language. Flood protection height exception. A flood protection height exception, and I'm sure you guys have had a chance to read it. If you would like me to, I will read it again, but basically, and I talked to our lawyer, a city attorney, and he asked about who would be the one that make the decision about whether it was a flood exception or not. And for me, I think that would definitely fall within the floodplain administrator for the city would be the person, or floodplain coordinator, whoever has that title, should make that decision. Other than that, did you guys have any questions about this?
I'd like to make one point of clarification. I've been on the board for way longer than I really want to admit.
You can always come back.
This applies to the RS1 district.
Yes.
In the RS1 district, you're limited to 25 feet high.
Yes.
So if you have a two-story house, you're talking roughly 9 feet on a floor. So now you're at 18. If you get more than a 7-foot high roof, now you're up at around that 25 feet. So if you elevate it more than 1 foot above the BFE, now you're pushing above the 25 feet.
Yes.
You have 10 feet of unoccupied appurtenance on top of that 25.
Yeah, you can get 10
Technically,
feet.
it's 35 in the RS1.
Okay, that's my question.
Yeah, 35.
Yeah,
Because the
because
math.
you have 25 feet for the building
But-
structural, and then they're given the 10 feet of unoccupied appurtenance.
And that's on every parcel
attic
in the
doesn't
city.
count as the
And I'll go back
25
to
feet.
that.
Okay.
That comes,
This
that's
is
where
the-
I'm getting jammed up. It comes to 35. How is this going to 45? Where's that 10?
Because they're talking about adding, because that unoccupied appurtenance only applies to the top of the building, right? So if we were to raise it by the 10 feet to allow the flood height exemption, you have the 10 on the bottom, 25 in the middle, and then 10 on top. That's where the potential for the 45 foot would come into play.
So if
I'll
we
be
go
honest,
to-
I don't remember the 10 feet allowance on residential structures.
So
Yes.
D says,
On commercial structures, yes, it can go above the 45 feet.
Yeah, did we, I'm not remembering it either. I was probably involved in writing it, but so if it's there, I believe you, but I don't.
I kind of figured that you guys wouldn't, so that's why I brought this one.
It's 337,
Yeah,
section.
so D is
D.
all parcels up to 10 feet of unoccupied building elements and attachments on top of the building shall not count towards the 45-foot building height.
Correct,
So
yeah, it shall
that's
not
what
count
Randy
towards-
was referencing.
Yeah, I know, it shall not count towards the 45-foot building height.
Right.
That doesn't have any application at all to building height restrictions that are lower than 45 feet.
Well, that's what Randy was referencing.
That was my understanding when we passed it.
Yeah, there is an issue with the code. So previously, there were references in each of the zoning districts for the building height, which is defined as from the required finished floor elevation to the highest bearing point of the roof. That's
Yes.
the building height.
Right.
There used to be small little references to the absolute building height that were removed from those code sections. So right now, we have a maximum building height of 25 feet in the RS1, and that's measured from the required finished floor elevation to the highest bearing point of the roof, and then it is silent as to the rest of and how that has been interpreted since that was removed. So because previously it has always been 35-foot absolute height in the RS1. And that's for that 10 feet of unoccupied appurtenances. For whatever reason, the absolute height references got removed from each one of the zoning districts, so it's kind of moot as to that missing 10 feet.
Okay.
Yes.
Wait, the intent was it was an absolute 25 feet in the
Correct.
in the
And
RS1.
I can't speak as to why those little
Yeah.
notations, because they were like little reference notations in each one of the zoning districts that got taken out. I don't know if that 10 feet of unoccupied appurtenances section, for whatever reason, was interpreted to where it applies to that section of the absolute building height, because that has always been the absolute building height in the RS1 is that 35 feet.
Okay.
But now
But
we're only
he
doing
did-
25 to the top of the roof is what we're approving?
No.
No.
Randy did reference 3-37,
35.
even though you guys are saying that was intended for the commercial area. He did reference that there. So what we're saying is if they had the 10 foot of appurtenances and the 10 foot below for flood exception, then it could potentially take a building to 45 feet.
With 2 stories.
Is there a
With 2
requirement?
stories,
Is there a
yes.
requirement? You have to build a 2-story house or something? It sounds like there's some requirement here or something.
No, there's no requirement.
Okay.
That's what I was talking about earlier when you get more open space, you get more use of you can do some low impact development. And that was another thing that if you guys are considering this, maybe you want to add in a requirement to add some low impact development on that site as well. But you get opportunities to do other things with the land other than build a structure, a larger structure.
But it's, with the current code, is it feasible to build a 10-foot wash-through and a 1-story house on top of it within the 25 feet? Is that?
Yes.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Okay, so the gentleman or person asking simply wants to be able to build a 2-story house on top of 10 feet piles instead of just 1 story that he'd be allowed to today, and this wouldn't be coming forward.
I think that it's something that I also think you guys should consider, not just because of this one person, but because of future development in the city of Cocoa Beach, and how do you want that to look? I think
the
that's what
question.
he brought
Yeah,
to
that's the
me
question.
as,
Yeah.
how do you want that to look? So
Yeah.
that's exactly what he brought to me as well, as whether or not, this is something that others may want to do at some point. Because if he just wanted to do it for himself, he could actually probably go in for a variance or something of that nature, right? And get it done anyway for himself. So this is something that we're
Right, I mean,
bringing
that's a
to.
4-1 vote, right? The commission would do.
Yeah.
But they had discussion at one of the commission meetings, and they requested us to draft some stuff up to bring to you guys to explore. So not only just for the one person, but for Cocoa Beach as well.
That'd be a huge, it's a huge area of the city this is, could impact. I mean, this is significant.
Yes.
Yeah, this is a really.
I'm still so confused. Are we talking about going from 25 feet to 35 feet to have a two-story house and 10 feet clearance, or to 45 feet, which is what this says?
It could be
I'm
both,
confused.
because I'm gonna show you what a roof looks like. So what they recommend in the hurricane area is a roof with a 30% pitch. So that can take you up to about 8 or 9 feet, just the roof. And that's when we talk about those unoccupied appurtenances.
So it's 25 feet plus the roof, whatever
Plus
that
the
may
roof.
be. So that's how
Well,
you got to that's how we got to 45.
That's how the code has been interpreted, is the 25 feet plus the roof.
Correct, so it's a maximum absolute height of 35 feet.
Okay,
And then the building height itself is a maximum of 25.
okay, so it's 35 feet.
Yes, so that's how it's been interpreted, is 25 feet plus the roof.
And my other question was, do we have a history of what actually has happened in Cocoa Beach? I mean, the projections I understand, but do we
I
have a
don't
history?
think that's what these projections are for. They're for what could happen. It's like, we never know. It's 1% chance that this could happen. But if you're a homeowner and you want to build your house to protect from that 1% chance, say that you're specifically worried about that, then would you have the option to do it here in Cocoa Beach?
And you would. You could do that today. You could have a 10-foot wash through in a single-story house, totally.
On a
I could go in there-
single-story house,
on
but not a
single-story.
two-story. So that's the question.
So it's really a question.
Can you build a two-story house
Right.
with the wash through, and the roof? I need some water.
Yeah, I'm only making sure that they all know this.
And you do it
yeah,
here
right.
in Cocoa Beach.
Because it almost sounds like it's like deemed like there must be a two-story house. Like this is like a, there's been a
No.
bond, like two-story houses must be.
You do not have to build a two-story house. If you build a one-story house, you're gonna meet the code, you're gonna be fine. But if you wanna build a two-story house and you wanna be able to meet the FEMA requirements, or say you wanna say, I wanna build my house to protect me from a Category 5 storm, because when I do that, my flood insurance rates go down. My insurance company likes my house better because I have a nice solid roof with a pitch on it that's a 30% pitch that does well in hurricanes. Then I also have a 10-foot wash through, so they're gonna rate me down compared to my neighbors who don't have this.
So what kind
Just,
of a,
just say, Ms. Colorado, so next.
So I think seems like we run into problems, and you pointed it out, when you have a community that's like retrofitting things, it runs into issues. Like if you have a whole community that's built to stilts, that's one thing. But if you have one in between, a whole nother community that's not. The same thing that we did with, I think, the intent of raising the elevations on new is causing problems for the adjacent properties because the the water runs off. Are we, just wondering if we're creating a different problem here where we have
And that's,
a stilted or raised elevation? Would it cause erosion to the neighboring adjacent houses that are not on stilts, probably, because
No.
we just don't have any?
actually, that's the opposite, because when you do fill, you raise your house up, and that's when you have that flow coming off of your property and going onto other property, and that's when you need additional drainage features to control that. Whereas with this design, you're using the natural ground, you're keeping your property at the natural ground, and then you're taking yourself up onto those stilts is where you're building your property to bring yourself out of the floodplain.
Okay, and then the other thing is, like, when we had the change to the to the commercial, where we had a ballot vote basically out to the people to change the height, what's the criteria? Because to me, this is a big enough change.
Oh, I
that would
never heard
require
about
a
the ballot.
change for a comprehensive change like this versus a one-time only, you know? So what's the
understand.
criteria threshold? Seems like it should be a ballot and put out, you know,
Oh, okay.
like we did for the commercial
And,
restriction.
It's because it's within it, they don't have to.
Wait, can they recommend that it go to a
It's
ballot?
asking what the criteria
How
is
does
and
that
why it would be on a ballot for the commercial and not residents.
Yeah, so, yeah, the reason there was a referendum to make modifications to the rules with regard to 45 feet is because a lot of the rules with regard to the 45 feet are in the city charter. The only way you can amend the city charter is through a ballot referendum, okay? So it went out and was done that way.
There's nothing similar for residential that has a restriction of height.
There are no
On the city- in the city
separate,
charter.
yeah, there are no separate lower height restrictions on residential in the charter. Technically, the 45-foot height limitation in the charter applies to residential too. It just happens to be we have lower ones in the code.
Gotcha.
If those went away, the 45-foot in the charter would still apply.
Ms. Bobo?
So he wants to, he wants to go from a single-story structure, which he currently has, and expand on that.
He may have a two-story. Do you know if he have a two-story?
I believe it's a vacant.
It's a
lot.
vacant lot, actually.
Was it a two-story?
Vacant lot.
Yeah, okay.
Property that's spread, it's a vacant lot.
Okay.
His specific reason for wanting to go up is because he didn't want to go out, because this is going to take up more of his property. When because if you're trying to get the same, say if you're trying to get 3,000 square feet, 2,500 square feet,
Does he have to
that
build,
means you have to build wider.
does he have to build 10-foot stilts in order to get a two-story home?
He does not.
And
He does
to-
not. He has to build 5 foot right now is what he has to go to. But he's asking to be able to go to the 10 foot, which is, again, one of the things that FEMA does recommend, so
Okay,
it's up to
so
you guys.
FEMA recommends it because they're predicting the future. They're saying floods will happen due to climate change. They're making
Increases.
a statement.
So say, for instance, you build and you got a 1 foot freeboard right now and you're at 5 feet. And you in climate change, and now you're no longer 1 foot freeboard because just that 1 foot has made that difference for you. Opposed to now he has a 5 foot of leeway for climate change, as well as, again, his insurance company may rate him down. I don't know. That's something that I don't get too deep involved, but FEMA did say that it can reduce your insurance.
Well, to her point, I'm not sure the history here has substantiated a knee-jerk reaction to just, put 10-foot stilts under people's homes and 2 stories on top of that and another 10-foot roof on top of that, which would bring us to the height of a lot of the commercial buildings, condos and things like that, which would turn our residential areas into looking more like commercial areas.
Yeah, some
I
people
mean,
have done
it seems like a huge leap.
I mean, these houses don't look like commercial properties.
Those look like they're in West Palm Beach.
I'm not sure where they're at, honestly, but they don't look like commercial properties.
I mean-
They could be Airbnbs though.
I mean,
They could
but-
be commercial.
Well, yeah, for sure.
So, you're saying commercial, I'm saying it could be, it absolutely could be commercial.
I think there's a big difference if the lot is way down a driveway and obviously with tremendous side yard setbacks from what I can see, as opposed to a house that perhaps is on Orlando, which is right next to the houses and is not down a driveway, it's right on the street. I think there's a huge difference there, and I don't know what this, I can't even guess what the solution is. But
So we're just here today as staff to ask for your recommendations, how you see it. Yeah.
I don't know.
Mr. Carver?
I just want to actually address you all so you understand what, so today, what is being said is you can build a 10-through wash-through and have a nice house on top. We all live in residential neighborhoods. This is really about aesthetics. It's nothing about all the flood stuff that's being discussed here. That's all a lot of noise. The gentleman would love to have a 2-story house on top, which if this changes, every residential neighborhood, someone could do that. So really what this is aesthetics, is understanding in our neighborhoods, is this something you think will be good for the neighborhoods? I mean, and I think, I went on a boat cruise through the canals, and there's some neighborhoods that have, actually, your neighborhood, where there's a lot of houses that are 2 stories with a, up, and you probably could stick a 45-foot tall house right there, and you probably barely even notice it. But also a lot of the other areas around here are single-story houses. And you could imagine that as a potential Airbnb investor or someone wanting to build a home or whatever they wanted to do, you could have a 45-foot tall house, 10-foot wash through, 2-story house right in the middle of 1960s single-story houses. Now, but here's the thing: is those single-story 1960 houses are flood risks. But there's nothing stopping someone from demolishing a 1960s house and again doing 10-foot and a single story on top, which I would argue probably would actually fit relatively okay in a neighborhood that has mainly single story. So I'd really encourage you all to table this and ask for artistic renderings in the different neighborhoods of what potentially a 45-foot building would look like. One in built neighborhoods with 2 or 2-story houses. Let's see what it looks like. But you should see what it looks like in the neighborhoods that are 1960s. I think without understanding the aesthetics of this, I can't imagine any type of vote yes or no, because I mean that's the impact that this will have will be profound, and it really just simply like this conversation here today. I mean, I really think so. That's just as your alternate, my only suggestion. I won't be voting on this. I think you understand where I stand on this. And I'm going to get off my soapbox and return the gavel to the gentleman here.
Second.
I just have a question. When you do talk about it again or decide to do whatever you want with it, this would be the opportunity that you could ask that a certain portion of the property is used for, not building. So it wouldn't be all pavers or all driveway, or it would have to give some of the land back to take the water in and deal with the storm surge and stuff like that. I mean, you could probably write that into it, where if your lot is this percentage, then this amount of your land has to be used for, et cetera, if you're gonna go up. That's where you give back to the community in that sense.
Well, realistically, people that live on the water can afford a lot more than people that don't live on the water. And, in consideration of the residents of the city that maybe can't afford to build up, they're stuck with what they have and they try to improve it the best they can. Maybe they don't like the idea of someone building high and then looking down at their, in their backyard.
Right.
So it would definitely change the character of the city, and it would, I think it would lean itself to, attracting commercial businesses into our residential neighborhoods and further eroding them.
I mean, there's 2-story houses that do look into my yard.
Yeah.
I mean, they're on the river and I am right across.
And, you want to encourage that, I mean, you know what I'm saying? It's like, yeah, so there are some on the rivers already that are higher, like you say, but it's kind of like, do we want our neighborhoods dotted with these higher?
But what's the longevity of houses that were built in 1950 and 1960?
We're having a side
Sorry,
discussion
I'm
here,
just,
so.
Yeah.
Ms. Colorado, do you have a question?
Yeah, so I think you're putting this to us for discussion today, right?
Kind of more for a
Basically.
discussion. I did want to say one more thing that I forgot to mention, that even now with what we've interpreted the code previously and what his requirements is, he can be at 40 feet. So this would give him an additional 5 feet.
So I guess my inputs would be based on all of our discussion too, is to clarify this 35-foot, 45-foot somehow in this change if it goes forward. And also in the sections on parking, I think there, from what I heard is that if you had a 10-foot, the intent would be to use that bottom for parking, storage, whatever.
It can only, even by FEMA regulations in our building code, our current building code, it can only be used as a wash through. And they don't have any regulations on parking areas. So you can park your car there and you can use it for storage, but you cannot at any point in time enclose it and make it a living area in that area. And there's no-
Right, I get that. So
that would
I'm
be against
almost
the law.
Going the other way, you might want to look at the parking section, because I think right now, in part for residential, you can't store trailers, boats, Sea-Doos, anything like that, except in a garage. So in this case, I think we'd either say that they can't park it on that first floor, the wash-through area, or, because I'm assuming they wouldn't have a garage.
Well, they would be able
maybe.
to park in underneath their home if it's 10 stories, with a trailer or something. They would have room under there for parking.
Yeah, but I think the parking section for residential says you can't do that unless it's in a garage, for like trailers.
That's why we would require it to be enclosed as these garages are here. So they would be enclosed garages underneath.
Okay, so it would be enclosed.
Yes, they covered
It's
that.
not a still.
Clarifying, I believe the section you're referring to is referring to semis and semi-trailers. I don't believe we have any provisions for requiring, unless they're over 26 feet in length.
Yeah, maybe you're right.
Oh, yeah, that's right.
Then we have
You might
special
need to
parking
just look at that, is all I'm
requirements.
saying, because I think there's some language.
I think it has to be behind a fence if it's
Closed
a
in.
trailer or something of that nature.
And it's a detail, like I said, you have to know exactly what this means, the stilts versus enclosed versus, I don't know.
That's
whatever.
already in what we recommended here, that we would require it to be enclosed.
And then I would recommend this would, if this would go forward, that it would warrant more like a town hall or something to inform people, because it's a big enough change and impact potentially that not everybody is gonna be, up to speed on this unless they just happen to be here and to paying attention, but it would affect all residents. So I feel like we need to do something to communicate, and get feedback on it.
Absolutely.
I think for me, the biggest concern that I have is the ambiguity in the language about the height.
Yeah.
Mr. Broughton was on the planning commission when I was there when we wrote it, and unless he has a different opinion, I think we intended it to be a 25-foot maximum height for homes. So I think that needs to be looked at and clarified and addressed.
That included the roof.
Yes,
That was everything.
yes.
I think I may have a little bit more clarity on this, and I think I may want to dig back even further in the iterations of the LDR. So I apologize. My work on height within the city has been so focused on the charter stuff because it is so unique that I needed to tease out the different definitions we have. And Chrissy is correct. We used to have a separate definition for absolute height and so on. And that was effectively a reference to the way the charter language has been interpreted. And I had to reconstruct my interpretation, which was the same as it has been for a long time, that the charter, the original charter restriction went to the top of any part of the building, no matter what, all right? However, within the LDRs, the definition for building height, and this would apply to building heights less than the 45-foot max, all right? So when we set 25 feet, all right? The building height definition that's in there currently, and I went back and checked in the revisions that were done in 2020, this definition was actually not changed, so it's pre-2020, so it's been there a while. That definition of building height, so how we would measure 25 feet, for example, reads that it's from finished grade or other legally required minimum elevation, okay, to the highest point of the finished roof deck elevation for a flat roof, or the highest bearing point of the roof trusses, which I had to remind myself, the bearing point on a roof truss is actually
Top of the wall.
Top of the wall.
Yeah, top of the wall, right, exactly. It does not include this.
Right, the pitch.
So, so our definition as it applies to things under the charter 45 feet actually doesn't include within that 25 feet the roof, okay? Is that generally consistent with the way staff has been
Yes.
reading it lately? Because that's how I'm reading the definition.
That is.
Okay. And I only mention because 10 feet is a good guess of what you might see there, but I mean, I suppose you could hypothetically come up with, there you go. Yeah, you got some examples there. You come up with something that,
Before we went and changed the heights and went through the charter amendments, we had absolute and building height.
right.
So we did not revise the height for any of the existing zoning districts at that time. We just provided those revisions to for the, measuring from the crown of the road and from the base flood elevation.
I may need to look back further. We may have done a prior set of
I
amendments.
think there were a couple, and
Yeah.
then those little references that were like notations in the code about the 35 feet absolute height.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think it would be pretty hard to stick with 25 feet if you're going to do any type of a pitch roof, even because you couldn't get 2 stories with 25 feet absolute.
Well, it's not including the pitch. It's not in the, oh, if you went 35 absolute?
It includes a 30-degree pitch, doesn't it?
So that's why I just don't, because you would have to subtract at least 8 feet for a pitch.
So is there relief, can he get a variance for this on this individual situation that, or not? Yes? He couldn't go up to 45 feet?
He could go. and
That's the
for-
situation seems like, it's a variance, I don't think this fits every neighborhood to change all this, that would be, I mean, the 60 style homes with the low pitch roofs that are 15 feet tall, you're gonna change this code and allow someone to put a 45-foot tall structure next to them on a quarter-acre lot, that's crazy.
Well, that was my point. If we could get something superimposed to reflect what our requirements for setbacks are. Side street 15 feet, setback from the street 10 feet, to see how that would play with
Right.
our actual setback requirements, not something that's looks like 100 feet off the road. You know what I'm saying?
Absolutely. And
I
that's,
mean, it's totally different. Someone's got a 2-acre lot and they're not 7 foot set, they're staying 25 feet away from the neighbor's property line. Another neighbor's got a big lot, maybe it's not an issue to build up to 45 feet. But in a lot of our neighborhoods, that would look horrible, and impact the neighbors too.
I know.
Affect every neighborhood in the zoning district.
Yeah.
Every neighborhood, this will be allowed.
Yeah.
I know we're talking about aesthetics, but I think we also need to think about flood damage, flood control, storm damage, those things as well, flood risk, insurance rates. We need to also consider that in our aesthetics.
I just have one, I'm looking at the LDC right now in section 206, which is single-family residential district. 206 N, it does say maximum building height 25 feet in these
But
RS1.
that doesn't include the roof.
I know, but it's not 35. So it
That's the
does
confusion.
specify it in RS1
Building
20.
height is defined from the minimum required finish floor elevation to the highest bearing point of the roof. And then it's just moot on anything above that point.
Yeah, so right now, somebody could potentially put a high-pitched roof out.
You could build a home on stilts, but it'd be not build a block, it could be wood, and then so you have it higher and more susceptible to the winds. You might
Right.
forego the flood damage,
Absolutely.
but now you're up there and now your home's a flying object to every house around you.
But then you got to think about what is your insurance, how the insurance rating is going, and can you allow it? So as the 1960s houses get replaced, are people coming in with new houses going to be able to build to protect from flood and flood damage? That's what I think this whole conversation is about, because at some point they are going to be replaced.
And they can be. They can be.
You can't.
And you actually,
You just
by
can't
going on
build
stilts
two-story.
and parking underneath of your home, you'd actually, without increasing the footprint of your house, you'd increase the livable square footage, because now you don't have a garage in that your garage is underneath. So if you raise a normal 2,000 square foot house up with a 2-car garage is probably about 450 square feet, you added the living space, and now you have a 6-car garage underneath your house without increasing the footprint with our current code. So it's still feasible without changing it.
Good point.
Any other comment, discussion? Do I have a motion?
Sure, we let the public.
Oh,
So how do we?
come on up, Mr. Brun.
Public comment.
Yeah.
Yes. I should have known you'd want to get up here.
Charles
I saw him
Broughton,
getting all anxious. I could see him kind of sitting there looking.
35 Westview Lane. Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. I do not miss this at all. My couple of things when I read this was the exception, and just the word exception. Because when I remember the code, I remember special exceptions. It's allowed in various properties for various reasons. And I thought, okay, well, that would be all right if it falls under the rules of special exception. It doesn't. It's something new, it sounds like, an exception for height. And what I heard was the floodplain administrator would determine that?
I'm the one that was, yeah.
Okay, so-
So, yes.
So that, to me, puts that person in a bad situation. There is provisions for special exceptions in the code already. If you made this a special exception, it would go to the the Board of Adjustments, it would be a variance, and they could do it with a 3-2. Well, it gets into height, so maybe that's not allowed, I don't know, because that's kind of weird with our city and our height stuff. So that's kind of, I don't know, I kind of like the idea of it being an option, but to go through the process of the Board of Adjustments and a variance. But that's just one thing. What about the other zone? So this is RS1. RM2 is at 35 feet. We're going to go to 45, 55? What do we do in RM2? And if I was an RM2 person, I'd go, hey, what about me? Because the general one for 45 feet that meets the highest requirement is 45. They can go something underneath, maybe up to 10, I don't know, depending on the BFE, and they get 10 on top. So when we did that charter change, which is a couple of amendments ago, referendums ago, it pretty much made 45 plus 10 plus 5, 65 is the new 45. And I know that it might not have been implied, but I certainly took it as that 10-foot appurtenance is on top applies to the whole city. It didn't say that. It was a 45-foot height limit, but when I read it, it meant everywhere, that you could put something underneath. And of course, you already have that provision in the code for flood zones. You can go up to BFE +1. That's in there for everybody at any point. But then this gave you a little bit more, maybe, because there's that word about other minimum elevation as determined or whatever. And then you got the 10 on top. So I certainly understood that to being, in my neighborhood, RS1, I'm in a single-family home with single-story home with single stories all around me, but I could still go 25 plus 10 to 35. That's what I interpreted that change to mean, even though didn't really filter us down. It's in the city charter, so it kind of has to flow down. So I would think the same would be with the RM2. One of the things you do as a planning and zoning board, it's in 1-41 for anybody that wants to go and read, what you're supposed to do is you're supposed to analyze and look at potential consequences of any change. This one would be a big one. I know there's, not a lot of time to analyze, but you should, and is it consistent with the comp plan? This seems like you should change the comp plan first, not the LDC. Comp plan doesn't allow this. That you go city charter, comp plan, LDC. It looks like we're starting at the bottom and trying to force it up. I would say in this case, vote no, person should go apply for a variance, and I would really not like to see this change go all the way through, but thank you.
I just wanted to clarify.
Questions, comments?
I wanted to clarify your comment about the floodplain administrator.
Yes.
He would only be determining that it's the actual flood risk at that property at that location. That was the difference in what you were saying.
There you go.
I agree, surprising with you, Orson, that
I've done my work here already.
yeah, you better go. That in a single-family residential area would be terrible. It also would be increasing on vacation rentals. If you go to Dauphin Island, Alabama, you go to Point Clear, you go to Myrtle Beach, they have them up on stilts and they're higher, but they're also a different type of tourism area than we are. We have not had 15-foot waves here with it that have surrounded the thing in 65 years that I know of. That doesn't mean FEMA gets to decide. They decide how it's going to be, and they're the ones determining the insurance. And it's important for the insurance. The last election was decided on this 45-foot height, and that's where the new commission was elected to. And now you're coming into and saying you want to change this. Is there going to be an administrative 10% allowed above and over this, like there is right now, which I think should not be allowed if you get to a certain point? But people don't want anything higher than 45. They made it very clear. I know it's charter, but they also made it clear 45 is it. They'll take the 10-foot wash through, they'll take appurtenances, but 45 is, and they weren't, I do not think your average voter thought that this was including residential. I absolutely know that a majority of voters that I talked to, they did not think that we're talking about 60 feet in a residential area. So the guy can build up on stilts, he can go and he can go to the Board of Adjustment. Well, actually, if he's going to talk about height, he'll have to go to the City Commission. He can go to the City Commission to build it up. And then you all need to relook at this. Stilts are great. That's wonderful. It gives a lot of room. But to put this type of height in residential areas, single-family residents, we already are hurting with all these Airbnbs. We don't need this. So that's my opinion.
Any other public comment? Any further questions, comments from the board?
That's another comment. I think this brought up a lot of good points, but maybe in the future we need to clarify the absolute building height for residential, so makes it clear for everybody. It'd be good. And then also maybe addressing where we start the measurement from as flood levels get adjusted. So maybe we base our building height off that, so people can
It already
build
is.
up. It is? Okay,
Yes.
all right.
It's 12 inches above the base flood elevation,
Okay,
or the crown of the road.
okay. I was thinking we're the crown of the roads, okay.
So if the flood elevation is above the crown of the road, then it's the base
Okay.
flood elevation.
18 inches from the crown of the road if you don't have a flood, if you're not in a special flood hazard area, right? Right?
Okay. Do I-
12.
I'll only reiterate what I said earlier. Ask for some
Oh, 12.
artistic drawings, guys, of what this would look in the different neighborhoods. It can be done, you guys can see some renderings in a neighborhood and they can put in a building that would be whatever it is. I'd really encourage y'all, because also that will go to the city commission as well, and also it'll be available to share with other residents. I might just post it on a forum so folks can see what it would look like. But I'm just saying, it is an aesthetic question that is being asked here,
Yes.
because you can protect your home against flooding right now with what we have. You can do it. It's perfectly legal, cool. Everything. So, okay, I'm done.
Good. All right,
But I
we have a
think
motion. We have three options. We can table it, we can approve it, we can deny it.
Is there a mechanism for us to have a joint meeting with the city commission to talk about something as major as this together?
I have no idea. It'd be a question for our city
I
attorney.
mean, it is hypothetically possible. I don't recall that we did it even with all the charter height stuff. The process laid out in our land development code is that you all come up with a recommendation. And again, that doesn't mean you've got to make a decision tonight. As the chair pointed out, one of your options is to table and discuss further, potentially with some additional information. But our LDC doesn't really contemplate
Not even a
that.
work session?
Yeah, I'm not suggesting it's illegal, but it's not been done it's not been done in the last many years, even on the charter height issue, when that was being considered. Just a point of information.
Can it change, can we have a different option, which is, maybe it's considered table, but to have them come back with, try to incorporate some of the things we talked about in different language. And come
I
back,
can work with Orson on that.
come back
Get
with
some
a
renderings.
plan
All right.
to roll it out
That's a great-
somehow, to communicate it to a wider audience. However, it makes sense to do that and then come back with all that. I mean,
Yeah.
That's what we can table it, ask for additional
Table
information.
it and do that.
And ask for more information. Yeah.
I think that's a great idea. It's definitely, something that's gonna be asked again, so having a good discussion about it and coming up with an answer and a solution is the best way to do it.
So is that the motion to?
I'll put a motion in. I move forward the city commission to propose amendments with the discuss changes in land development, the recommendation to deny it.
Okay.
Deny or table?
You said deny.
Yeah, deny.
Do I have a second?
I second.
Any further discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? So, it's
So,
recommended.
did everybody vote?
I abstain.
You can't abstain.
And let's
Yeah.
see, what do I do?
Sorry to be so plain.
I'm gonna have to vote aye then.
So, all right, it's denied 5-0.
It's so confusing.
The motion was to deny,
Get that.
and it was.
Yeah, what was our vote?
5-0 in favor of denial.
Okay. Thank you, guys. Nice way to meet you guys.
Thank you.
With the
All
tough
right.
one.
Next item is C4, general discussion to allow mobility of beach businesses.
So as you guys have kind of picked up on tonight with the land development amendment for the ice cream truck, that started with a discussion with the commission, kind of gave the staff some direction of what they wanted us to pursue, and we drafted some text amendment language. Same thing with the height, came from a discussion with the commission, and then we drafted some language based on that discussion. So this one is the same kind of thing. We are bringing to you, wanting to open the ground for discussion on allowing mobility of beach businesses. So the memo here, just currently we have beach business agreements to operate on the beach. These are right now in 15 granted locations, which is the map here. The current agreement, the way that it is written, states that the business can only operate in one granted location, and that area, they're kind of stagnant in that spot. We have had requests from 2 different beach vendors to figure out some way of becoming maybe more mobile on the beach. The examples here is an ice cream truck, or ice cream cart, excuse me, to being able to operate, move along the beach conducting business rather than being just stuck in that one spot. Or another business would likely have the ability to take customer reservations for beach equipment at multiple granted locations. So where they're not just setting up at one, that they could take a reservation from someone saying, hey, I'm gonna be at this place today, and then they would go and set up and everything. So this is not motioning to approve or deny anything. It's just a general discussion on, the thoughts of this, how you feel, if you would like staff to move forward with this, and if so, in what way. That's kind of what we're bringing for you here with the discussion item. And I kind of welcome any questions you have.
Any questions? Comments?
So is it, the intent is truly to have it mobile and one cart or whatever moving, or can they have 3 locations, 3 carts there?
We are needing some clarification. We're working on that right now on the ability to have multiple locations. Currently, the one application, you have to specify one granted location. You can't pick multiple ones. We're trying to get clarification on if you could have multiple applications for various locations.
Yeah, because I think, to me, it means something totally different to have one cart to be able to move up and down versus request, set up at 5 different locations and put. So I guess that was just
Yeah, two
sort of
different type of businesses and
one question and clarification of what that means.
So he is asking to be able to move up and down.
Come up to the mic.
So one location at a time.
He's asking to be able to move up and down the beach. If he was to go to get multiple locations, he would have multiple fees. So I think that's why he doesn't want to do that, because I think each one is like maybe $2,000 or something. So.
And is there any limitation now? I just don't know on how many can be in one location at a time, like businesses of any.
We have not found where there was a limitation of the amount of businesses at one location. The code speaks to 2, but it doesn't say more or less than.
They have to be different type of businesses is the current interpretation of the code. Like you couldn't have 3 ice cream carts at one granted location. So it would just be, but you could have 3 ice cream trucks or ice cream carts at multiple granted locations.
If I remember right, they have a designated area. So I guess the way and correct me if I'm wrong, the way I understood this was that somebody has an area, they could take a reservation for somebody 1,000 feet down the beach. How do you prevent somebody from taking a reservation from their area and going down to another area and setting up?
Well, currently, right now, they're not allowed to set up in that, like, for that person in that other area. They can give them the beach equipment to then take, like the customer then take to their spot where they want to sit and they set up on their own.
Good.
But under this, they can.
Under this, they can give the customer the beach equipment and they can go, the customer can take it where they want it to go, but they cannot personally go set it up in the beach.
Who picks it up?
The business cannot go set it up for them outside of
No,
their.
but who picks it up? If the customer
customer
takes
will pick
it,
it up.
goes and gets it, and then just leaves it there and leaves the beach, who picks it up? Does the customer have to bring it back, or does the operator have to come and get it?
I'm not sure on the agreements.
Bring it back because they're renting it.
We charge a deposit.
So they're renting the equipment and they have to bring it back in order to get the deposit back. Where they would be charged additional if they didn't, it's like renting a library book. You don't
So they
return
have to
it.
give an additional deposit for the equipment
Yeah,
to guarantee that they bring it back.
yes.
Which right now, they don't have to do it if they're in their own little territory, right? They just pay.
Yeah, so if you go out there and you see the chairs and everything is already set up, then those things stay in that area and the customers don't have to do anything. They just pay the rental fee and go sit at one of those setups. But then there's also people who are renting that's not on the beach. They're like in different little locations around the city. And that customer would pick up an umbrella from them and go out to the beach. And then when they're done with it, they would bring it back.
Oh, you mean like Ron John's okay, now I get it.
So what this particular person is asking to do is to go out ahead of time. It's kind of like a little family excursion, and they want to set this up for a family. They go out ahead of time, whatever time the person said they want to go to the beach, say 5 o'clock. They set up a nice little tent, some chairs, some little games for the family to play. When the family is done, they go home. They don't have to touch anything. They go back out there and pick everything up and clean up everything, and then they go. So that's why they want to be more mobile, because most people may say, I want to be by coconuts or I want to be out by the pier. So they want to be able to do that. They want to be able to take it wherever the customer is asking.
Are they mobile on the beach, or are they transporting it on the roadways, or what?
They're transporting it on the roadways, but they're going to different locations throughout the beach area. And so by us having, right now we only have a mechanism to allow you to pick one area. So some family from out of town may say, no, I want to be down on the south end of the beach or on the north end. And then that's kind of interfering with their business model.
Are there one-time permits to allow somebody to set up on the beach? Say for a wedding?
Yes. Those are event permits, special events.
Have we received any kickback from vendors that might have an objection?
Well, yeah, because they know that these people don't have, they were doing it, and that's when we had to enforce the code, and the vendors were calling, saying, these people are in our location, they're in our area, they're not supposed to be here.
Do the vendors pay a fee to the city for the privilege of having that spot?
Yes.
And would the I'm just going to say Ranjan, whoever it is, would they have to pay a fee to the city the same way if they wanted to go set up at Coconuts?
Yes. Well, they wouldn't set up in front of Coconuts.
If this is just a separate rental, like brick and mortar rental beach chairs, and you go and rent your chair and you put it in your car and you take it to the beach.
Right.
No, there are no required
Right, because
fees
you're
or
right.
anything like that.
No.
But if that company goes and sets up at Coconuts Beach, they set up the tent that you were talking about and the chairs, would they have to pay a fee to the city the same way the people who have the license at Coconuts are paying a fee to the city?
That's what we're trying to see if we can come up with a mechanism to do that, where they can pay a fee and be able to move to any of these 15 locations.
The only other thing, I guess now they have a designated area. If it goes through and if we're able to accommodate them, I would just say that the parking for them to pull in to any of these side streets and stuff would be a problem during certain times of the year. If they're
I
gonna
think I
pull-
missed what you said. Did you say parking?
Parking. So if they're going to be mobile and using the road, I mean, there's quite a few of those beach access roads that there's no room for parking anything, even for 5 minutes. So I would just suggest maybe you have a designated place for them to pull in while they do this or something, because it can get jammed up pretty quick, especially in this middle section there. It's already pretty jammed up, and it's hard for people to get in and out of those side streets.
So basically giving them a limitation on parking
Or a
in certain
designated
areas.
spot.
Designated
They
areas
pull
that they could do
in
that.
and they unload and load or whatever, and then they get out.
Well, you can't even
I
get
don't know.
into Shepherd Park without paying.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying, is just the parking is, during certain times of the year, obviously, it's already really jammed up, and you can, I think this would just make it maybe worse at that certain time. So just think about maybe how they get access to the beach that they're talking about in certain areas at certain times of the day, to say this is their designated place, or how they can maneuver in and out quickly.
I think we would probably want to limit, say, whoever's got number 3 from being able to go and rent in the same spot as number 10. Because number 10 has made an investment and paid their fees, and now you're taking it away from them. Now, if that one person has 3 locations, that's a different story. But going in where somebody else has already got a license and permit.
Operate the same business out of the
Okay.
same.
Yeah, the code, the way it is now, said you can't operate the same kind of business, which is another one of the things that we were having a difficult time with, because we're talking about setup. So this company is talking about setting up a tent and chairs, and then a lot of these businesses are already doing some type of setup. So would this just be an umbrella, would be a different setup than a tent and chair setup? And if so, can 2 businesses be at one location because they're doing kind of a different sort of thing?
Sounds like an enforcement nightmare.
Yeah. But I'm not
My
enforcing it.
goodness.
Maybe a lot that goes into reworking the agreements to allow the mobility. And before staff kind of went on through that undertaking, I just wanted to see if the mobility was something that was thought of as favorable, to the board.
I think the parking issue is very important because, for example, Marriott Hampton, that's private property. And they have every right to stop
Right,
people
so-
from coming in offloading on their property.
Part of the license agreement that they have to have in order to do these beach businesses is right now they have to get upland agreements with the property owners. So the ones that are operating out of, the Marriott or whatnot, they actually have an agreement with that, facility to what they can and can't do and where and everything like that. So that's part of what we would need to rework and look at is how are we going to do that with multiple locations with those upland agreements and
Right.
stuff. Like I said, before we take on that that whole task, what is the general feel of allowing that mobility as a starting point?
So what are the businesses that want to be mobile? What are they specifically doing? They want to just do,
I'm sorry?
I think the one we were talking about mobile was more the ice cream vendor.
okay.
We're back to ice cream again.
Is this the
They like to
vendor?
move
Surf on
around.
the beach?
Is this the vendor that there have been a lot of enforcement issues with over time?
Yes, this is the vendor there is enforcement issues with.
Yeah, okay, I'm familiar.
Is that ice cream or
Yes.
prepackaged frozen food?
So what when they do break agreements, does that,
It's code enforcement.
does that come back to the people who say yay or nay to this and
it's code
like,
enforcement.
you're banned from doing that now because you keep breaking the agreement or?
It's code enforcement. It's code enforcement.
It's just code enforcement, it's just a slap on the wrist.
Fines, I guess.
Can we structure where just, one business not, if they're mobile, they can't interfere with other businesses and it can't be the same business?
It's already
Remember-
structured where they couldn't be the same business in the
Yeah.
same location. That would remain the same.
Would that prohibit, let's say there was a traveling chair business, would that prohibit someone then from setting up a chair business in the other zone?
Like a neighboring zone or?
Yeah.
If there's a chair business in zone or, grand location 8 and someone else wanted it in 9, that would be allowable. But you couldn't have 2 chair businesses in 8.
This is a new business model. It's not the typical, I got 17, I
come up to the-
17 chairs, and the residents don't want, right? This is, for lack of a better term, this is the concierge model. I show up in Cocoa Beach, I rented an Airbnb.
Just say your
Not
name
the-
and address first.
Colette Sharpens here, 3165 North Atlantic. I show up in Cocoa Beach. Maybe I have some extra money. I rented an Airbnb. I don't want to tote my crap down the street in a wagon. I'd really like to call somebody up and say, hey, I'm going to be at Coconuts on Tuesday the 12th at 10 o'clock. I have 13 people with me. Please go set my stuff up. I will show up and then I will pay you and then I will use it. I will do my thing and I'm going to leave at, I'm going to be there from 10 to 2. You'll see me at Jazzy's later with my nice sunburn, and then on Wednesday I'd like to be down by the pier, right? So this is like a concierge service that we're talking about. It's a totally new business model. It's not Joe's chair rental sitting by the side of Surfside, right? It is a different model that people are proposing. Now maybe your ice cream vendor is just trying to figure out how to get out of their other issues, but I think you should consider this as a different business model. Right, so similar to Uber and taxis, similar to VRBO and hotels, right? You now have a concierge business that's trying to come into Cocoa Beach to change the way things are looking. So it's happened in other beaches, it's happened in other beach communities. We are just the next one to have this show up, right? So if we can say no, and that's fine, you can say no, and then we continue with you drag your own crap down to the beach and whatever else, or we can say yes and find out whether or not we can charge people differently, right? Maybe it's more than $2,000 to have this concierge business. Maybe you got to buy a bunch of other things. So I think time moves on. Businesses change, things change. Your houses from the 1960s are going to get torn down. Back to your other issue, your business model is going to change from the guy who has a shipping crate, right? So I urge you to consider that we need to think of going forward and of what other locations are doing. I know we want Cocoa Beach to stay Cocoa Beach, but there are things that are going to change on us, and we can change with them or not.
Any other questions or comments from the board?
Melissa Byron, 3165 North Atlantic Avenue, Cocoa Beach. I don't know if you've all been here, but I've been here a long time, and when this came into effect, this was a huge, huge deal, and it took like 20 months to even figure out how we're going to do this. And those people have very stringent requirements. I mean, they have removed a vendor because they didn't follow the rules and they lost their franchise. It's basically a franchise. We're franchising these locations to these businesses. And now you're going to say to another guy who wants to come in, when I worked for the city, we had these every week, at least 4 of them. Oh, I can do this new thing. I can do this new thing. They never think through it. The beach, these guys have a franchise with us. They have behaved, they have done what they were supposed to do, and now we're going to let someone come in and say, hey, I'm going to come to Coconuts. Coconuts will throw a fit. I mean, every one of these, the Marriott will throw a fit because they hire people and they have them at certain standards. And they're going to say, we take care of this beach. You know, the Hilton goes and cleans it. You know, and now you're going to say this person can come out and say, sure, go ahead and put your 13 people out and make a mess of the beach and clean it up or whatever. So I think that, you know, quit trying to change things and redo things because of singular events. You know, we don't have good enforcement. This has worked. It is working. It's keeping the businesses out of the neighborhoods. If you'll notice exactly where they're at, we're keeping them out of the residential for a purpose. But, you know, the guy just wants to do a new business and he's going to be infringing on every one of these other businesses that have had good working relationships with the city. I think that should be rewarded.
Any other comments from the board? All right, we look forward to you bringing us back something to consider.
So recommendation just to move forward and keep, continue to flesh this out a little more. Okay. That's all we needed on that one.
All right, next up is staff and city attorney reports. City attorney?
City attorney has nothing to report. It's a pleasure to be with you.
Staff?
I think I just request approval of the 2020 year-end report. Is that on the next? I think that's just, I'm sorry.
Yes.
So if I could get a motion for approval of that, of the 2020 year-end, that would be great.
So moved.
Do you have a second?
Second.
All in favor, say aye. Aye. That's 5-0.
Thank you. Up next, I just have the fourth quarter permit report. This is from October through December 2022. We had 616 applications, 1,194 inspections, a little over $200,000 in revenue, and 639 permits issued. Changes, we've kind of provided a new format, so we're kind of comparing the third quarter with the fourth quarter, so we're seeing, changes between the two. So between the third and fourth quarter, we've had 46 less records, applications submitted. There have been more permits issued, 116 more permits issued than the previous quarter. And then, inspections. 116 more inspections than the third quarter was done in the fourth quarter. And then, let's see, 24 permits less issued in the fourth quarter than the third, and then there was a little over $12,000 less in the fourth quarter than in the third. So those are just the changes between the two quarters. So. And
Just for clarification, the difference between records and permits, somebody could start an application, but it doesn't go to the next.
So records created would be a permit application, and then the permits issued, they've been fully approved and reviewed, and then you have an actual permit that's issued. So.
Just wanted to make sure that we got a couple of new board members to make sure they understood. Any additional questions for
I had
staff?
a question, actually.
Mr. Tarver?
Would it be, maybe I'm not allowed to ask, but could we have additional reports since the Airbnb ordinance is in effect on how that is having an impact, like the number of additional registrations we're seeing, enforcement actions? I understand there'll be a vendor, the vendor coming on will be taking action. Like, would that be a burden to report statistics like that quarterly on?
We, at this point, with the data we have, it's probably not enough to provide an accurate depiction. We are currently working on that third-party agreement to where we'll get basically the reality of the situation.
Yeah.
To where, they're finding these and we're actually getting realistic numbers, basically.
It was a great, I thought the ordinance was, the ordinance is in full effect now, right? It's
Correct.
voted, so like, it'd be nice to really see, because I thought it was a great ordinance and a lot of input from the board when I was on there. And I mean, I think being it's like probably one of the most single pressing issue I think anyone talks about, it'd be, because if it's not working, then we got to figure out something else, because then we missed the mark, right? I mean, if it's a failure, it's a failure. Got to go back to the drawing board. That's all, so.
Hopefully, once we get the third-party registration process going and letters are going out and people are coming into compliance, because I think a lot of it is just people aren't aware of it. So once those are being sent out and we're getting, people coming into compliance, and then we can kind of see an accurate depiction of what's really going on. But
And the revenue, there's a
Yes.
decent amount of revenue tied to
Yes.
this.
Yes.
I mean, this is not inconsequential. And then also, I mean, I think, gosh, I hate to ask for even more, but so question actually, the company that is doing this will also be going after homestead exemptions, right? If you're operating an Airbnb, we'll go to the tax collector and let them know?
yes,
Okay.
I know that has been discussed in the past. I don't know if this is specifically with this current third party that
Okay.
we've been exploring with, but that is a component of it, yes.
Because that's another
Yes.
revenue. That's another revenue to help pay for enforcement, because I know that's the hardest part is having money to pay for staff. I mean, it takes staff, it takes time. I mean, it's no magic wand to make this happen.
Correct.
I mean, because then you start getting, that'll be additional, anyways, just some thoughts I was thinking about how to see, what results are coming about.
Yeah, and definitely once we get that third party going, I think that's going to be an ongoing process to see how that performance is going. And I mean, we'll probably get to a plateau to where, we only have a certain number of properties in the city, but at least
Yeah.
we'll,
Got to
have
get
an
up,
accurate-
because I don't think it probably hasn't moved much from the, what was it, 100 something was the, it probably has.
That's my point, is I would have to say, just off the top of my head, I think we only have about 100 of them floating out there now that are actually in compliance.
Wow.
But like I said, I don't know if that's just lack of knowledge of, just because we don't have the enforcement to go through every single posting at this point.
Oh, yeah,
so.
yeah. I couldn't even imagine how much work that would take. So, anyway, thank you.
Chris, could you give us a quick update on some of the projects that have come before the board, like the Weston, the 66 and 99?
Yeah, it's probably pulling from the most recent activity report. So, no, I don't have it on me. I know that they're actively demoing the International Palm site. I just don't know the phase of the demolition. I know 66, they've demoed the site. They have an approved building permit. I'm not sure when the construction is supposed to start on that one.
Yeah, we're working with them daily on that site to see where they're at. I think a lot of developers are having some cash flow issues with the new current situation, but that's why we had them take down the fence and clean up everything, because it was turning into kind of like a trashy little situation.
About the parking on the dirt lot.
Yeah, they're not supposed to be parking on that lot. They're supposed to put some grass down and, just like we did with the city, once we got our demo down, until they get, ready to start building. And they said the last time we heard from them would be about 30 days before they would be ready to go. So we requested that they go ahead and clean up that lot and make sure that it is presentable for the city until they're ready to go.
Okay.
On 66, and then what was the other one that he asked about? That was 66 and 99, the same guy. And then, the Weston, they did they're taking down, I think they have 3 buildings down now, and they did all of their asbestos abatement and things like that already is done. And so we're working with them for the same thing, making sure that they keep their site nice and clean, and they're gonna take that building down next to the Marlin. That's gonna be the last one that they take down.
Okay.
And then, do you know the current The current phase on the surf property, the one that's currently being constructed now, the Backstreet Boys?
Yeah, Backstreet Boys. That one is actually, they're starting to do some drywall inside, so they're getting going pretty fast there. I think they're gonna be, finishing up the exterior pretty quickly, so, yeah.
Sounds good.
We are awaiting a site plan application on that property.
Because they've already put something on it. There's a-
Code enforcement.
Yeah, code
has
enforcement is working on
reached
that.
us. Mhm.
Yeah, we were already on it.
Code enforcement still under the police, or is it moved back to you?
It's still under the police.
What's going on in the lot next to Long Doggers? There was a piece of heavy equipment there.
That is the dinosaur store annex
Oh, yes.
building.
Yeah, that's-
So he does have an approved site plan and an active building permit for that construction.
Additional to the dinosaur.
Okay. Appreciate it. Thank you.
Next time I'll make sure I bring something for the short-term rental to present for you guys, wherever we're at on that.
Sounds good.
Yeah,
Thank you.
yeah.
Any additional general public comments? Mr. Broughton?
Thanks. Charles Broughton, 35 Westview Lane. Wade, there was one time when I was on planning board that we were invited to the city commission. I want to say 2016 timeframe. I don't remember what it was.
It was before my time.
We
so-
got there, we were there, kind of awkward, we're there. But they wanted to ask questions, and it was a back and forth. And I could look it up and see what it was. But I do recall we did have a standing order that the planning board chairman would attend the next meeting of the city commission on any items recommended from the planning board. I don't know that really ever happened, during previous tenure, and I don't know if you still have it in your little cheat sheet of operation. Planning board chairman or designee, so you can get out of it anytime you want.
I'll designate you, Charles.
One thing I wanted to bring up also in some of my review is in the comp plan, I found the Cape Canaveral Hospital District is supposed to bring somebody here annually to report on their doings. And I don't ever remember seeing anybody. They're doing a lot of stuff with the new hospital over Merritt Island. The district may or may not go away. There's 11 acres on 50 acres of submerged land out there. They don't have to comply with our height, our density, or intensity. So it's a really big possible move out there at the hospital. So you guys should be informed.
I can't recall them ever coming out of all the years I've been here. It's a good point.
There is a lot of activity on the Merritt Island site that they're supposed to be moving to all of a sudden.
Yep. Any additional public comment? All right. Board final comments, Mr. Mason? Ms. Snyder?
No, thank you.
Ms. Colorado? Ms. Bowe? Mr. Darby? Ms. McKinley? All right. Last thing I want to say, welcome, Mr. Mason, Ms. Bowe. Look forward to working with you over the next year. With that, our next meeting is tentatively scheduled for May 1st. And with that, we are adjourned.